Story 1. My wife secretly deleted a message from my parents about taking over their business 6 years ago. She only confessed to doing it after they asked me about it recently. I, 35M, have been married to my wife, Rebecca, 32F, for almost 6 years now. We've been together for almost 4 years before we got married. And now we even have 2 beautiful daughters together. Both of us have lived in Oregon all our lives, and since we live in a relatively small town, everybody knows everybody. We've been friends since we were kids. We didn't even go to college out of state and opted for the nearest one, and that's how we became friends and eventually got into a relationship. Our families also got along pretty well together until they suddenly didn't because of my parents. For context, my parents stopped talking to me out of the blue just a month before my wedding, and even at the wedding they were a no-show, which was really shocking. As far as I was concerned, we didn't have any fights or any incidents that could have possibly led to my parents giving me the cold shoulder like that for no reason. It's like one day they were just gone from my life, and no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't get them back anymore. They blocked me and just disappeared from my life without any explanation. I tried several times to contact them, but I was blocked online, so I even visited them at their house. But their neighbors told me that they'd moved out and didn't think that they were going to be back anytime soon. This happened exactly 1 month before our wedding, and I was pretty stressed out because I had no idea where they were. It was only at my wedding reception that I realized where they were. I'd been talking to a couple of my relatives on my mother's side, and they told me all about their move. They told me that my parents had moved to Seattle so they could take over my mother's uncle's business. My parents had been working in management for a while, so this was obviously a massive opportunity for them, and I was glad that they took it up. But at the same time, I was pretty disappointed that they didn't think it was important to talk to me before making this huge decision. I was even more upset by the fact that they'd asked a cousin of mine to take over the marketing department of the company and not me, even though they knew that I had an interest in the field and was looking to start something of my own. That company could have been the perfect opportunity for me to get groomed and trained under my parents so that I could eventually take over, just like my parents were taking over for their uncle. I felt like they were depriving me of a huge opportunity on purpose, and I decided that I wasn't going to try and talk to them anymore either because what they'd done was really selfish and stupid in my opinion. Rebecca was also on my side and agreed with my decision. She even said that my parents not showing up at my wedding told me everything that I needed to know about how much they cared for me. That was 6 years ago, and since then, I haven't talked to my parents. I didn't even contact them when Rebecca got pregnant for the first time, and not even when our first daughter was born. I often put up photos of my family online, and we had a lot of relatives following us, so I knew that my parents would get to know me somehow, but they still never made an effort to get in touch with us. I was very bitter about this for a long time, but after my second daughter was born about 2 years ago, I began to feel like I needed to let this age-old feud go and made up my mind that if my parents ever bothered to contact me in the future, I would talk to them, even if it was just to get to the bottom of why they'd abandoned me here. And they finally reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. I knew that their business was doing really well, and they were planning to expand and open up a branch here in Oregon as well. I'd heard from a couple of relatives that they were planning to move back here after almost 6 years of working out of Seattle, and if they were going to move back home, I don't think they could avoid confronting me. So they reached out to me online and informed me that they were coming back and they really wanted to talk to me. They weren't going to move down here permanently for a couple of weeks because they still had a lot of loose ends to tie up back at work, but they could visit for a day or two. So we decided to meet for lunch one day after a short conversation online. This happened almost 2 weeks ago. At lunch, they seemed really happy to see me, and it was as if no time had passed at all. I showed them pictures of their granddaughters, and they almost started crying tears of joy and told me that they could never forgive me for keeping them away for so long and never even bothering to fly out to them. I was extremely confused by that allegation because as far as I was concerned, they were the ones who abandoned me here and left without an explanation. So they couldn't say that to me and blame me for keeping them away. I reminded them that they were the ones who left and blocked me everywhere without even leaving an address for me to find out where they were so I could go see them. Then my mother told me that she'd sent me an email just in case I changed my mind, and Rebecca was supposed to pass on that message to me, even after all the horrible things that I had said to them. By then, I was really confused because I'd never said anything horrible to my parents like they were accusing me of, and neither had Rebecca passed on any message to me. So my father told me about an incident that had taken place all those years ago and was actually the reason that they left without a word. Apparently, the day that my parents received the call from my mother's uncle saying that he wanted them to come to Seattle so they could check out his business and come to a decision regarding whether they'd be willing to take over or not because he was going to retire soon and he needed somebody responsible. My mother had worked with her uncle for a couple of years when she was younger but had moved away after she got married. But her uncle had still held a spot for her in case she wanted to come back to work for him later. My mother thought it was the right time, and so she said yes without a second thought. They called me very excitedly to inform me of this and asked me if I wanted to join them as well. They knew that I was working in the marketing department at a firm here, but they thought it would be better for me to work with them instead, and I could eventually take over as well. The only issue was that the business was based out of Seattle and we'd have to move, but it was still possible because I was getting married in a month and we didn't have kids or anything yet, so we just could move along with them and start afresh there. Unfortunately, it was Rebecca who answered their call because I wasn't at home that day, and I'd forgotten my phone at home because I thought I was going out with friends after a really long time. Rebecca told my parents that she would inform me as soon as I came back home, and my parents were satisfied with that. But about an hour later, they received a text from me where I'd said that I wasn't going to let them ruin my marriage by misleading me with some slimy little job offer that I didn't even need. The text also said that apparently my parents had been against Rebecca from the very first day and wanted her out, which is why they were trying to buy me out with the enticing idea of a new business. There were a lot of curse words in the text directed toward my parents, which took them by shock because I wasn't one to talk to them that way, especially because they were actually doing a good thing for me. They were shocked and angry, but despite that, they still left me an email with their new business address and told me that I could find them there in case I changed my mind and decided to act less insane. But they still blocked me everywhere else because the things that I'd said to them were unacceptable and unforgivable. They took a flight out to Seattle a couple of days later, and by then it was too late for me to go and visit them. I tried several more times to see them, but they were just never at their house and I could never just get the timing right. And then I learned where they were from my relatives at the reception and quit trying to contact them at all. So we just ended up never speaking again. After that discussion with my parents, I realized that there'd just been a huge miscommunication, and they seemed to understand as well. We didn't want to admit it at the time, but we knew deep down that Rebecca had everything to do with this. So I ended the lunch with my parents hastily and abruptly so I could go back home and talk to Rebecca instead. They were quite okay with it, and so I left as soon as I could. Thankfully, our kids were spending a day with Rebecca's parents, and when I came back home it was just me and her. I hadn't told her earlier that I'd gone to meet my parents for lunch because I had this feeling that she didn't really like them and wouldn't approve of it if she knew that I was meeting them. But as soon as I came back home, I decided to cut to the chase and asked her point blank why she had never given me the message that my parents had left for me. She pretended to be confused for a while and told me that she didn't know what I was talking about, but I didn't back down and pressed on. I asked her if she deleted the text and the email from my phone as well. Then she finally stopped pretending and turned around to confess that she had indeed done all of those things that I was accusing her of. But she didn't seem sorry about it in the least and instead told me that she'd done it all for my own good. More than devastated that my wife had been keeping such a huge secret from me for so many years, I was just pissed that she didn't even seem sorry about it and somehow seemed to think that she'd done me a favor or something. She continued and told me that back then, she was the one who replied to my parents' messages pretending to be me and said all those things that she believed were true. She told me that she'd always felt like my parents didn't really approve of her because she wasn't as driven and ambitious as the rest of the people in my family. She was the kind of person who went to college for fun and for the experience, but afterward, she had no intention of working on a career for herself and only wanted to get married and have kids. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but she told me that she thought my parents were judgmental and didn't like her, which is why they were trying to get me to move to Seattle with them just a month before my wedding so I would ditch her and choose the business instead. She told me that she had deleted all those messages and that email so I wouldn't change my mind about the wedding. She also didn't want to move to Seattle because she couldn't afford to leave her friends and family behind and start over in a new place where she didn't even know anyone. I snapped at her when she said that because to protect her own relationships, she'd ruined two of my most important ones. It was completely unacceptable what she'd done, and I couldn't believe that she was even trying to defend it. For the record, My parents had never been judgmental of her and actually loved Rebecca like their own. So I didn't even know where she got that notion that they didn't like her or approve of her lifestyle choices. And even if she felt that way for some reason, she could have just talked to me, and I would have done something to make her feel better. But instead, she went behind my back, and not only did she ruin my relationship with my parents, but she also destroyed any chances that I had at work on my own terms in an area that I was comfortable with and forced me to stay here and work in a firm where there was hardly any scope for growth for years on end. After my daughters were born, I couldn't even quit my job and do something for myself because I couldn't risk my financial stability now that I had 2 kids to think of. So thanks to her, I ended up wasting several years of my life in a dead-end job when I could have been working with my parents and growing a business that I would eventually be able to take over and turn into my own. I was really upset and we got into a huge fight that day, but she just refused to apologize for anything that she'd done and kept insisting that she only wanted to do what was best for me. I didn't understand how any of this was the best for me, and to me it sounded more like she just wanted to do what was the best for her or whatever she thought was the best for me. I wasn't a child, and I really feel like I should have been allowed to come to a decision on my own, even if it was the wrong decision and even if it was the worst decision that I could have made. At least it would have been mine, and I wouldn't have any regrets about it. I deserved to at least know about this offer that my parents had for me, and she should have had enough faith in me to know that I would make the right call and I would never desert her. But she didn't trust me and decided to take things into her own hands, which just messed everything up for both of us. But most importantly, it messed up the relationship that I had with my parents, and they ended up missing so many important milestones of my life which I wanted them to be a part of, like my daughter's birth. And she, no matter how hard she tried, couldn't bring that moment back anymore. I could just join the business now, but those significant moments that I lost with my parents are just forever gone, and there's nothing that we can do about it. So if not anything else, then the least she could have done was apologize for that. But she just didn't think that anything she did was wrong and refused to apologize for any of it. That entire fight was so frustrating that I ended up leaving the house and driving to a hotel so I wouldn't have to talk to her anymore because I was just that frustrated with her and everything that she did, mostly her refusal to acknowledge her mistakes and accept them. I put in my 2 weeks' notice at work that very evening and made up my mind that now I was going to join my parents and finally work in an environment that was actually conducive and didn't make me feel like it was sucking away at my soul. I didn't think about informing Rebecca about it, just like she hadn't bothered to inform me about so many things that she thought I didn't deserve to know. She tried to call me several times after I left, but I just turned my phone off because I really didn't want to talk to her at that point and decided to watch a TV show and drink some wine instead. For the next 2 days, I didn't talk to her at all, but I really felt like I needed to see my kids. So I would drop in at home from time to meet them but would ignore Rebecca and her attempts to get me to talk to her throughout. It wasn't easy because she just kept going on and tried to convince me that she was somehow not the bad guy here but my parents were for bringing up a secret that she had managed to hide from me for so long and said that they were still the ones trying to ruin our marriage even when things were going so well for us. By us, she obviously meant her because things weren't going that great for me. My income was decent, but I hated my job and I hated working at that firm even more because it was just so boring and mundane, and nobody ever appreciated any new ideas. But all Rebecca cared about was the money, and as long as that was coming in, she didn't care about how I felt. In the past, there had been several instances where she even talked me out of looking for other jobs or starting my own business because she wanted a stable life. I didn't blame her for that, but it was just selfish to the core, and the fact that she kept blaming everybody but herself made it even worse. So a couple of days ago, when I was visiting in the evening to see the kids, she started ranting once more about how I was letting my parents take the steering wheel in our relationship and told me that I needed to think for myself. I couldn't take it anymore and told her that I finally was thinking for myself and she was just mad that I wasn't being her little puppet anymore. She didn't like that and finally asked me a question, which is probably what made me come here. She admitted that she'd lied to me in the past, but then she asked me if I was happy with the life I had or not. She went on to say that if she hadn't lied to me, then I would have probably taken up my parents on that offer all those years ago, and then we probably would have had to cancel our wedding because I would want to move to Seattle, and there was no way that Rebecca was ready to make such a huge move and leave all her friends and family behind. And if we didn't get married then, I would never have the 2 daughters that I have now. My life would be completely different. She asked me if that was really what I wanted, and that made me pause and rethink everything a little because I didn't know how to answer that question. So I just didn't reply to her and came back to the hotel. It's been a couple of days since then, and I haven't had enough courage to go back home yet. So far, I didn't have a plan on what to do after this, and I just figured that I would go back home once she apologized. But now I just don't know what to do anymore. I do love my daughters a lot, and I think they make my life infinitely better. I also love Rebecca in spite of everything, and it wasn't as if the past couple of years were all bad because I did have my good times even at my workplace. Having said that, I truly don't know how to answer Rebecca's question, and I found myself actually reconsidering everything. I haven't talked to my parents about all of this yet because we're trying to keep the conversation light and my friends have no clue what's going on. So I'm here on Reddit hoping that I find some answers. I have to get upsetting with my wife for never passing on a message that my parents left for me. Update 1. I finally talked to my parents about this and they had just one thing to say. That Rebecca, no matter what the consequences were, should have been truthful and transparent with me. They also clarified that they'd only ever had one conversation about what Rebecca wanted to do in the future where my mother had told her that she, being a working woman herself, would never discourage another woman from pursuing her own dreams. So if Rebecca was holding back on account of them, she didn't have to, and my parents told her that they would be supportive of her decision no matter what it was. For some reason, Rebecca thought that this was my parents being judgmental because she didn't want to work and only wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. It was a ridiculous conclusion to jump to, especially without even bothering to talk to them about this. In fact, I've kind of lost any respect that I had for Rebecca, and now I can't imagine myself going back to living with her anymore. It's been almost a week since we last met, and she hasn't tried to contact me since. She probably thinks that she totally owned me with that one question. The truth is, I might be happy with how my life turned out, but that's only because Rebecca shut a door that she wasn't even supposed to and decided for me without consulting with me. Who knows how much happier I would have been had I been allowed to make that call for myself. The credit for my life turning out the way that it did goes to me, not to her. She might have given me 2 beautiful daughters, but she can't use them as leverage against me. Not in this situation, at least. After talking to my parents, I think I have a lot more clarity on what to do now. Even if I forgive Rebecca, I hardly think that I can continue with this marriage because I just won't ever be able to trust her or look at her the same way again. It's not even just about the business anymore. It's about her lying to me and then acting as if she did the right thing. I can't put up with that sort of behavior, and I really shouldn't have to. I've had a really hard time coming to this decision, but I think that a divorce is the only way forward for me right now. Update 2. So I filed for divorce a day ago, and I honestly feel so relieved and strangely free. It's been hard because I don't get to speak to my kids since I haven't been back to my house for a while, but I really miss them. I've been considering popping in for maybe just 15 minutes, but I don't know how Rebecca is going to take it, so I've been avoiding my family altogether. It's not the right thing to do, but I just don't know what else I can do. It's just a couple of days more that I have to go without my kids because after that, Rebecca will be served with the divorce, and then we'll see what happens after that. Update 3. So the divorce proceedings have started, and it's weird because Rebecca actually took the news of the divorce a lot better than I thought she would. I've been a little busy for the past couple of days, so I hadn't been able to post any updates. But when Rebecca found out that I'd filed for divorce, she called me and told me that she knew this was coming, and the only thing that she wanted from me was a promise that I wouldn't demand full custody of our daughters. I promised her that because no matter what would have happened or how bitter the divorce would have been, I never would have taken our kids away from their mother. She might have messed up as a wife, but she was a great mom, and I couldn't deny it. It's been a while, and we are at the negotiation stage right now. We're trying our best to be cordial and civil to each other, but I can tell that both of us are pretty heartbroken. Neither of us had ever imagined that this was how our marriage would come to an end. But well, it's happening, and it's not easy. Update 4. Quick update here. After almost 7 months, the divorce is final now, and the custody arrangement has also been worked out. I've joined my parents in their business, and since they're opening up a branch here, I'm going to be taking over as the head of that branch. I get the kids for half of the week, and Rebecca gets to keep them for the other half. She got a little too much alimony for my taste, but it's all over now, so I guess I'm cool with it. What matters is that I'm going to have my dream job and finally live life on my own terms now. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Mael dumps grandkids at my door and claims they're mine after husband finds out about her affair and a secret daughter. I, 28F, have been married to Ree, 30M, for 4 years and have known him for 8. He introduced me to his family after we'd been together for 6 months, and while most of his family had liked me, his mother did not. My mother-in-law, Ruth, 56F, has always been kind of weird around me. She doesn't like me, and I've known that for a long time, but she'd usually just ignore me and try not to talk to me as much as she could whenever I came by. Last week, I was home alone, and she knew that because Ree was away on a business retreat. It was one of those social detox retreats where you're not allowed to have your phones or talk to anyone else unless it's an absolute emergency. So all of us knew that we wouldn't be able to reach him for a few days. On the 4th day of his being gone, Ruth dropped by my house, and with her came 2 kids I'd never seen before. They were both under 10 years old but didn't say a word to me for as long as they were here. In fact, saying that Ruth dropped by would be incorrect. She rang the bell many times before I finally opened the door, literally raged into the house with 2 kids in tow, and then left in an equally angry way just as she'd come. I tried to get her to stop so I could talk to her and get some answers about what the hell she was doing, but with no luck, because she'd taken off in her car before I could ask her anything. So I was left with the 2 random kids who refused to look at me, talk to me, or even acknowledge that I was in the house with them. I tried talking to them to find out who their parents were, but they were as good as nonverbal to me, so I gave up. My first instinct had been to call CPS, but I didn't do that because I had a nagging feeling that these kids were definitely related to my husband's family somehow. I couldn't place it, but both the kids looked familiar to me for some reason while I was trying to figure out why they seemed related. So, that's why I didn't call CPS and instead chose to call my husband. I told the receptionist at their resort that I needed to speak to my husband urgently, and within a few minutes, I was on the phone with him explaining everything that had happened. He told me he'd be home within a few hours and hung up. So then I was alone with the kids until he came back. The resort they'd been staying in wasn't too far away from the city, and it just took him 4 hours to drive back home. For those 4 hours, those 2 kids consciously avoided looking at me, but I kept watching over them like a hawk. I didn't even go to the washroom for those 4 hours because I wasn't about to let those kids out of my sight at any cost whatsoever. As soon as Ree came back home, I took him aside and explained how the kids weren't speaking to me at all, and how strangely they'd been whispering among themselves the entire time that they'd been here, careful enough to not let me overhear a word. This was very weird and secretive behavior from 2 kids, so I was feeling very paranoid and was on the verge of calling CPS, but Ree stopped me and told me that he'd called his mother over to explain, so whatever we needed to do we could do after we confronted Ruth. I'd been trying to get through to Ruth the entire time I was at home, but she'd been ignoring all my calls. However, when Ree had called her half an hour before he reached home, she'd answered and had told him that she'd come over and explain in a while. So after around an hour, Ruth arrived once more, and this time she had a lot of other people with her, too. She'd arrived with Ree's entire family. My father-in-law, Ree's older brother, 32M, and his wife. I didn't understand why she'd come with an army of her own, and the others looked just as surprised as I felt. Nevertheless, Ree did confront his mother and asked about the kids. The kids were in the room with us and were literally cowering in fear and nervousness. They were trying their best to make themselves smaller and less noticeable, and I could tell that it was Ruth who was having that effect on them. When Ree asked his mom whose kids these were, she said that they were mine without missing a beat, and I was like, what? Because, of course, these weren't my kids. Ree and I had decided to remain child-free for a few years, and if we changed our mind later, we'd just adopt. That had always been the deal, so I was shocked at Ruth's allegation, and so was the rest of the family. Ree told her to cut it out because obviously we thought she was joking, but she doubled down on what she said and started off with some completely fictional story. Apparently, 3 weeks ago, she'd been contacted by some random man who told her that I was his ex-girlfriend. I'd been dating this guy for years and even had 2 kids with him during the course of our relationship, but once I got married, I cut him off and abandoned those kids as well before ghosting him. Now that he'd found me after several years of stalking, he tried to contact me, but I just blocked him again. So he'd been left with no other option but to contact my family, and that happened to be Ruth. He'd supposedly dropped the kids off at her place, and she, in a fit of rage, had dropped them off at mine so she could reveal to everyone that I'd been a cheater and a liar all along. While she was speaking, I was literally at a loss for words and just kept staring at her with my mouth wide open, and she went on concocting some nonsense. After she was done talking, she told Ree that since I already had kids now, we had to get custody of them and make sure we raised them well because the dad didn't want them anymore. Ree refused to believe her and told her to take the kids and go because he knew she'd been lying all along. But unfortunately, the rest of the family wasn't convinced. They did think that my mother-in-law was telling the truth and so insisted that we take care of them, or maybe they did know that Ruth was lying but just didn't want to take up the responsibility of raising two random kids, and so they were pushing them onto us. There was a lot of shouting and yelling during the argument that came next, and eventually, Ree told them that we'd keep the kids with us for just a day for their sake, but after that, if Ruth didn't come and take them, then he'd call CPS. All this time, the kids were in the room with us, but as soon as CPS was mentioned, they ran to another room and somehow managed to lock themselves in while screaming in terror that they didn't want anyone to come take them away. My in-laws took that opportunity to leave us with the kids, and we spent the next half an hour trying to calm them down and convince them that nobody would come and take them away. They'd finally spoken to us, so at least that was an improvement. And after a while, they opened the door too, and it was clear that they'd been crying because their eyes were all red and teary. So we consoled them, put them to bed in the guest room, and went to sleep ourselves in our bedroom. We'd had a long, tiring day, and we were confused as hell as to what was going on here. Ree and I didn't even talk much before going to bed because we were that tired. It was not until the next morning that Ree and I discussed what to do next with the kids. We couldn't take care of them forever because that had never been in the cards anyway, but we couldn't call CPS either because apparently they were terrified of that idea. While we were brainstorming, Ree said something about how it would help so much if there was some proof that Ruth had brought the kids here. Finally, when he said that, I was reminded of the security footage from the cameras that I'd installed outside. In the panic and hubbub of the previous day, I'd completely forgotten about the security cameras and that I could actually use that footage to prove that Ruth had brought the kids here. To be honest, we've never had cause to use the cameras, so we'd forgotten about them. But when Ree said that and I remembered, we rushed to the laptop to access the camera footage. When we played it, we saw Ruth get out of her car and grab the kids. Then she marched them up to our door, and that's when something crazy happened. One of the kids tried to shake her off and make a run for it back to the car, but she grabbed him real quick once more and proceeded to shake him violently. It was the younger kid who tried to run, and when the older sibling saw him being shaken, he tried to tell Ruth to stop, but she turned around and slapped the older kid on the cheek. I gasped because the slap even looked like it had hurt, and it finally made sense that they were cowering in fear when they saw Ruth in the house once more, when she came by to argue with us. Ree was just as shocked as I was, and we realized that the reason that the kids hadn't been speaking had probably also been because of Ruth. She'd instructed them not to talk, and that's why they'd kept to themselves. We realized immediately that something fishy was going on and wanted to call the cops or CPS. But the kids' terrified faces when we mentioned them the previous day were haunting us, so we didn't. Instead, we called a friend of ours who was a cop and informed him about what was going on, and he's the one who advised us to post the security footage on our social media. For one, it would help us prove that it was Ruth who brought the kids along with her, and secondly, the kids were definitely not ours, but whoever's kids these were, they might be looking for them. Ruth wasn't a kidnapper, and she definitely would not have abducted two kids, and if she'd taken these kids away from someone and they'd given them up, it meant that their real parents were definitely scared of the law and were up to something fishy. So we decided to go ahead and post the security footage with no hopes except that at least this would help us prove ourselves innocent. Prove me to be innocent, to be more precise, because Ruth had intended to get me into trouble over this. Ree and I posted the clip of Ruth marching the kids to our doorstep, and within hours, it had received several comments from our known ones. My brother-in-law was the first to apologize to us, but Ree's dad remained on Ruth's side and didn't say anything. Ruth herself didn't say anything except that we needed to take that video down or she'd sue us for defamation. We told her to bring it on because we weren't scared, but she hasn't done anything so far. The kids have been all right. They've told us their names but refused to answer any other questions we asked them about their past, their family, or their real parents. We haven't heard from anyone else for the past couple of days. But yesterday, my father-in-law finally called. Ree and I had assumed that he was calling to apologize, but when we answered, he was screaming at us for ruining his marriage and that we were the reason he was going to have to get divorced at his age. Neither of us had any idea what he was talking about, so we called Ree's brother instead, who told us that after we posted the clip online, Ruth and Ree's dad had been fighting like cats and dogs every single day, and things had finally come to a head yesterday when Ruth and her husband had yet another fight, at the end of which, Ruth told him that she wanted a divorce. Now she'd even left the house and gone somewhere else to stay for a while, but hadn't told anyone where she was. Now my father-in-law was pissed at us for some reason because he thinks that us posting the footage is what led to all these fights. ITA for posting the footage of my mother-in-law dropping 2 unknown kids at my doorstep after she accused me of cheating and said those kids were mine? Update 1. Hey everyone. So big update here. We finally found out who these kids really are and why exactly my in-laws are getting divorced. It's crazy for Ree and I right now, and I'm hoping saying this out loud might help me make sense of things. So the kids are technically Ruth's grandkids, but just not the way we thought they'd be. Apparently, Ruth had an affair a couple of years into her marriage and ended up getting pregnant, too. Right after the baby was born, she got a paternity test done, and it turned out to be her affair partner's baby. So she talked her husband into giving the child up for adoption because she said she wasn't willing to raise a third after Ree and his brother. Child, now that she was almost 30, she was 28 at the time. My father-in-law wasn't happy about it, but he gave in to Ruth's demands because he believed that since she was the one, she'd be the one having to deal with the kid the most, and if she wasn't ready, then it was probably the best thing for them to give the child up for adoption. So Ruth manipulated her husband into letting her affair partner adopt their daughter when she was 6 months old without even him knowing about it. She'd continued to see her partner until his demise from a sudden stroke 2 years ago, and had been cheating on her husband for more than the last 28 years. She'd also kept in touch with her daughter, and that's whose kids these were, aged 5 and 7. That's also why the kids look so familiar, because they had the same dark hair and eyes that my mother-in-law and her daughter had also inherited from her. Her daughter had never been married and had both these kids with her boyfriend, but her boyfriend had dumped her about 2 months ago, and now she was struggling to make ends meet. Unfortunately, Ruth's daughter had a drug problem, and so did her boyfriend. So her grandkids had grown up in fear of anything to do with the law and recognized the word CPS, or cops, very well because of the fear they associated it with. Thanks to Ruth's threats whenever she would visit her daughter. Ruth would constantly threaten to call CPS on them and have their kids taken away, but her daughter and her boyfriend would beg her not to do anything of the sort and manage to evade it every time. And they'd even train their kids to run to the other room and cry whenever she would say those words, which is something we'd personally witnessed the other day. However, after her breakup, her daughter's drug problem had become worse due to grief, and she was barely functioning anymore. She could neither take care of herself nor of her kids and had stopped going to work for weeks. She worked at the local grocery store, but she'd been fired from that job and barely had any money left. Ruth realized that she couldn't just leave her grandkids to suffer with her daughter, so she brought them and dumped them onto me and Ree last week, then dropped her daughter off at rehab. She'd finally had to confess the truth to her husband because she'd taken up the responsibility to pay for her daughter's treatment in rehab, and because she had no money of her own, she'd have to rely on her husband's. After she told him the truth, they got into a fight where apparently Ree's dad said a lot of things. After that, she told him that he wouldn't have to bother about the money. She'd arranged for it herself, and that she wanted a divorce now, then left the house and has been living with Ree's older brother since then. We didn't know her whereabouts so far because she'd made him promise not to tell anyone, because she didn't want her husband to find out just yet. She was really distraught and has been in a very emotionally fragile state ever since she showed up at their house. It's been almost 4 days since she's been living with them, and they've been lying to Ree's dad because they don't want him to find out. Ruth has told them the truth as well, which is how we found out, because Ree's brother finally broke down today and ended up telling us the truth about the kids and even showed us pictures to prove it. My father-in-law has been miserable ever since Ruth left, and Ree has been visiting him every day to make sure he's all right. The kids are still with me, and they're doing a lot better but still refuse to talk about their parents, which now I understand. It sucks for them, but I've decided to take care of them until their mother is out of rehab or at least they have a better place to go to. Update 2. So it's been 2 weeks since my original post, and my in-laws decided to get back together today, officially. The divorce is off now. They made up a few days ago when Ree's dad went over to visit his older son to ask if they'd been in touch with Ruth and found her there. They talked about everything, and Ruth convinced him that she'd only loved the other guy, her affair partner, in the initial years, but after that, her life had been all about her husband. She'd only been in touch with him because of their daughter and no other reason, and he believes her. He's decided to give her another chance and work on their marriage for real this time. I don't know what they're thinking, but as long as they're all right, it's not any of my business. Ree doesn't know how to feel about any of this either, but I've convinced him not to talk to his parents about any of this. They're grown adults and can do whatever they want to with their lives. It's really none of our business. Most importantly, Ruth is not someone I trust or like, so I think the less we interact with her, the better it is for Ree and me right now. As for the kids, Ree's brother has decided that they'll take them in because I'm going to have to go back to work full-time from next week. I'm a teacher, so I had a couple weeks off for the summer, but I can't permanently keep the kids with me. Ree and I will kind of miss them because even though they refused to talk about their parents, they were quite open with us about other things and would be chattering away all day either with us or amongst themselves. They were a lot more open with us now since they arrived first, and we're happy about that because it means they felt safe with us. I trust Ree's brother. They're good people but a little too naive for their own good. I've made them promise not to leave the kids alone around Ruth, and they agree because the way she lost her temper with the kids the day she dropped them off at my place was scary to watch, and had their biological mother been around to take care of them, she probably would have called the cops on Ruth for the way she'd been treating those kids. We've been trying to familiarize the kids with Ree's brother and his wife for a while before they move in with them, and it's going well so far, so we hope that it continues even after they move out. Update 3. Hey everyone, the kids have been living with my brother-in-law and his wife for a week now, and they're doing relatively well. They've started going to the public school nearby, too, and are a lot happier and more bubbly than when they first arrived. My sister-in-law was a stay-at-home wife before, so she's also quite happy with this new arrangement. Ree and I have been in no contact with Ruth ever since the day she dropped the kids off at my place and accused me of being a cheater when she'd been the actual cheater all along. We can forgive the cheating, but we cannot forgive the very intentional attempt to ruin my marriage and dump her grandkids onto me. She could have gone to my brother-in-law if she really cared about the kids, but she cared more about ruining my image in marriage, so she came to me first. I'm lucky that Ree is a trusting husband and a good man who didn't just believe his mother blindly while she was saying all those things about me, and that's why our marriage is still working, because otherwise we probably would have broken up by now. Ree has kept in touch with his dad, and he's not very happy that his parents have chosen to stay together in spite of Ruth's infidelity, but it's their choice, and he has to respect it, mostly because I don't want him to intervene in their relationship. He's very upset with whatever Ruth has done and thinks that she's definitely the worst mother in the world right now who somehow managed to fail all 3 of her grown-up children. And I agree with him, but I don't want him to confront her about it. I just don't want to talk to her, see her, or hear from her ever again. She's a nasty piece of work who's tried to ruin my relationship with my husband and in-laws once already, and I'm not about to let her do that once again. My father-in-law has since apologized to me for not believing in me when Ruth made up that story about me and for blaming Ree and me for posting the footage of Ruth mistreating the children. But I don't buy it. I don't think someone can just change their mind overnight, and I don't want anything to do with him either. Ree can keep in touch with him, but I don't think I'll be attending any holiday parties hosted by my in-laws anytime soon. Update 4. So it's been a little over 3 months, and my half-sister-in-law, Ruth's other daughter, was finally released from rehab 2 weeks ago. My brother-in-law and his wife have continued to foster the kids, and will do so for the foreseeable future because Ruth's other daughter is still not completely fit to raise 2 kids on her own just yet. She's living with Ruth and my father-in-law, which is crazy to me because the man is literally living with his wife's affair partner's daughter. I'm not as large-hearted and forgiving as that, or maybe I just have too much of a spine to forgive a cheater. It's ridiculous to me, but hey, if it works for them, then it works for them. We still haven't talked to them, and we definitely won't in the future either, because Ruth is just a garbage person and we're sticking to our decision to cut her off. She's tried several times to reach out to Ree again, but my husband loves me too much to even consider speaking to that woman again, and I love him for that. Ree's also been telling me that the kids are probably going to get adopted by his brother soon enough because they've grown too attached to the kids, and since their father doesn't want them anymore and their mother is incapable of raising them, it'll probably be easier for them to get custody as well. They haven't done anything yet legally, but I really hope they do get custody of the kids, because as far as I'm concerned, that's the best thing that can happen to those kids. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My mother-in-law secretly insulted me for years, so I tricked her into showing her true colors to my husband. Now, we've moved out, tried counseling, and I've gotten pregnant, but my mother-in-law is apologizing. Hey people. I met my husband during our time at university, where we were both studying psychology. Our initial connection was purely academic. We were often paired together for projects and study groups. Over time, our shared interests led to a friendship that saw us spend much of our free time together. We would hang out after classes, explore campus spots, discuss our coursework, and share our thoughts on various psychological theories. This routine went on for the better part of our university years. As we entered our final year, our relationship evolved. We both realized that our feelings had grown deeper, and we fell in love. This romantic connection brought a lot of happiness into our lives, making our bond even stronger. We finished the final year of university while balancing our academics with our relationship. After graduating, we dated for 2 more years, carefully considering our future together. By then, we were certain that we wanted to spend our lives together, so we decided to marry. My family situation was somewhat complex. My parents had divorced years ago, and my mother had passed away a few years before I met my husband. I only had my father, who, despite the past, was supportive and happy for us. My husband's family was different. He had been raised by a single mother who had devoted her life to him. She was also supportive of our decision to marry, understanding how much we cared for each other. Our wedding was a simple affair. Only our closest friends and family attended the ceremony. It wasn't as grand as our friends expected it to be, but it was perfect for us. Before we got married, we discussed living arrangements, specifically regarding my husband's mother. Having raised him without any support, he felt a strong sense of duty to take care of her, especially now that he was earning and she was getting older. I agreed to this arrangement. There was nothing for me to say no to. I understood where he came from and respected his dedication to his mother. After our wedding, we moved into the house owned by my mother-in-law. She had lived there for many years, and it made sense for us to join her rather than to find a new place. Living with her turned out to be easier than I had initially expected. She was an independent woman who largely kept to herself. She rarely needed my help. She'd go out of her way to cook for us, and it felt like a small, happy family. She and I mostly spoke during our evening tea sessions in the backyard. We spoke about my work, her work back in the day, and even her dating life. I thought I'd found myself a new friend. She wasn't in my way, and I appreciated the balance we managed to strike in our living arrangements. How wrong I was. My husband and I enjoyed our Saturday date nights, which had become a tradition for us. Whether it was stepping out for drinks, partying with friends, or simply grabbing dinner by ourselves, these evenings were a special time for us to reconnect. One week, however, our plans were interrupted when my mother-in-law mentioned she wasn't feeling well. Out of concern, we decided to stay back with her. The following weekend, she expressed a desire to go shopping for her friend's son's wedding and wanted us to accompany her. We agreed, turning our usual date night into a shopping trip. The next week, I felt a bit dizzy from the heavy workload at my job. My mother-in-law noticed and told my husband to stay home to look after me. I appreciated her concern, but it started to feel like our date nights were being sidelined. For nearly 2 months, various reasons kept coming up, preventing us from going out on our date nights. Whether it was her health, errands, or other concerns, our Saturday evenings were consistently occupied. I found it disheartening, as those moments alone with my husband were precious to me. One week, she offered to cook for us, suggesting we stay in. I decided it was time to speak up. I firmly told her that we hadn't been out on a date in a long time and that I wanted to go out with my husband that evening. She didn't object, but her smile was strained. I saw how her eyes stayed on us until we got in the car and left. She was not at all happy. We enjoyed our night out, but upon returning home very late, we found my mother-in-law waiting by the door. She said she was worried about us and added that staying out late made her very restless. She felt like she'd lose us. I saw how this affected my husband. It made him very sad. It was no surprise when he suggested we should avoid going out in the evenings and plan our dates in the morning instead. This change was difficult for me. Our date nights were more than just time away from home. They were about maintaining a special connection in our relationship. Shifting to morning dates didn't feel the same, but I didn't want to trouble my mother-in-law either. We were still spending time together, so the timing was no big deal for me. We adapted by finding new, entertaining date options. Morning brunches, afternoon outings, and midweek lunch dates became our new routine. Kept the peace in our household, and we realized that we were going on dates more frequently. I only had my mother-in-law to thank. That weekend, my husband planned to go out with his friends on a camping trip. The boys had been planning for a long time. I and my mother-in-law gave him a hearty send-off and came back to watch some Netflix. She made potato wedges and dessert while I bought some rose wine that she liked. Everything was going great until she said that I hardly do anything around the house. It was so random. I didn't understand if she was talking about the show or me. When I asked, she said that she was talking to me and started saying how the house was always dusty and she couldn't clean everything, cook, and also take care of her personal work. She needs some help from me as well. I felt very guilty. I told her I would start helping from now on and she should rest. So I dusted the house, helped her clean the dishes, took the clothes out for dry cleaning, emptied the trash cans, and also helped her in cooking. While we were making lasagna for the two of us, she laughed and asked if I never learned cooking. I smiled and said that I didn't. She commented that cooking is the basic thing I must have learned before marrying her son. She asked if I would leave him starving if something were to happen to her. I was shocked. Though she made it sound like a joke, her eyes were hard and angry. I didn't reply and kept quiet. That night, I enrolled in a cooking class to learn the techniques. My husband came back, and things between me and my mother-in-law went back to how they were before. One evening, I was joking around with my husband, and he dropped his pen on the floor. I slowly nudged it with my leg and asked him to pick it up. He smiled and picked it up. My mother-in-law saw this. When we were alone, she said that I should move my body sometimes at least, otherwise I'd be at risk of obesity. It's good to move one's body a few times a day if I am not capable of doing it the way everyone else does. I had always been a chubby kid, a hefty woman now. Her statement felt like an insult. She asked me not to make her son feel inferior again. That last part she did not even bother to make it sound like a joke or even a friendly conversation. It sounded more like a threat. I apologized to her and said that we were just joking and I did not intend to make my husband feel inferior. That's not what I had in mind. She asked me to forget about it. Her taunts and insults became more frequent. I'd be talking on the phone with my friends and she'd come and say that I hung out with very bad company. "Those girls are true evil," she once said. I asked her not to say such things because my girls are special to me. They'd been with me when I needed them. She said I should stop having friends because I didn't know how to choose the right ones. Then, the taunts were about the way I dressed. The sleeves are too small. The shorts are too high. The earrings are too big. The heels are unnecessary. She started controlling my life, and I kept quiet for my husband's sake. I made a cake for her birthday, and she threw it in the trash bin. I saw her do it. When my husband came into the kitchen, she said that the cake was what she made, and she didn't like the way it turned out. I wanted to cry but kept mum. I didn't want to be a spoil during a happy occasion. It was getting really hard to stay with her, but I never said anything to my husband. It was a Sunday and we just came back from church. She was putting this plate of chicken for baking in the oven when I came there to fetch myself a glass of water. She said that I was not praying the right way in the church. I asked her to tell me what was wrong with my praying. She said it was the way I was leaning in front of the Lord, how I was speaking to the priest, and not taking the holy water from him the right way. I didn't know there was a right way of doing these things. I was being sincere, but she said, if only my mother taught me things properly, her troubles would have been less. My mother should be the one to blame. She raised a very bad daughter. She didn't stop at that. She said, that's how a broken family would be. A dad who never showed up and a mother who didn't do her part. She said she was thankful that despite not being married, she gave her son the right manners and morals. I didn't shout, but I got threateningly close to her and said the next time she says anything about my parents, I'll not keep quiet. I respect her for being a single mom and never questioned her upbringing ways, so she shouldn't talk about my mom. She did not say a word. She smacked the plate of chicken to the floor and began crying. My husband ran into the kitchen, and she told him that I took the plate from her hand and threw it to the floor because she added garlic powder to the recipe. Sounded so silly even to me. My husband just looked at me like I lost my mind. He asked what made me so angry. I told him she threw the plate and I did not. The blame game began, and he asked us both to go to our rooms and not say another word. The tension between my mother-in-law and me reached its breaking point one evening when she blamed me for something I didn't do. It was a trivial matter, but her harsh words and accusatory tone were the last straw for me. I stopped talking to her entirely. From that moment on, I made a conscious effort to avoid being in the same place at the same time as her. Our home became a battleground of avoidance. I started cooking for myself and refused to eat the food she prepared. When she and my husband spent time together, I made sure to be elsewhere, whether it was in another room or out of the house. My mother-in-law seemed pleased with this arrangement, her satisfaction evident in the way she interacted with my husband when I wasn't around. My husband soon noticed my behavior. One evening, he confronted me, asking why I was distancing myself from his mother and him. It was a difficult conversation, but I finally told him everything. I recounted all the taunts and the constant blaming, the way she undermined me at every turn. His reaction was not what I had hoped for. He didn't believe me. He insisted that I must have misunderstood his mother because she was never that rude. He told me she liked me, and it hurt to see how blind he was to her true nature. I told him he was being biased. His response was to suggest I try harder to adjust, to make an effort to get along. But I had reached my limit. There was only so much I could do, and I could not continue to endure the insults and wrongful accusations. The strain between my mother-in-law and me began to affect my relationship with my husband. Our once cherished Saturday date nights became a thing of the past. We stopped talking about our days, and we ceased meeting with our mutual friends to avoid the uncomfortable discussions about our problems at home. I realized that to save my marriage, I needed to show my husband his mother's true colors. I understood that he had known her for years and loved her deeply, so it was only fair that he had doubts about my complaints. I didn't expect him to believe me instantly, but I needed him to see the reality of the situation. I chose a day carefully. I knew my husband would be home, and I made sure to spend time in common areas of the house, places where my mother-in-law would usually find me. She didn't know her son was home. He took a leave of absence, and none of us bothered to tell her. True to form, she couldn't resist making snide remarks and giving me disappointed looks whenever we crossed paths. Then she complained about the way I did things around the house, blamed me for minor inconveniences, and made cutting comments about my character and capabilities. It was so loud that my husband heard these things all the way to his room. When she finally realized her son was home, she was a little startled, but seeing how he said nothing about her behavior, she went on insulting me. At first, he tried to stay out of it for whatever reason, but as the day wore on, I could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes. He had never seen his mother behave this way. I realized he was keeping quiet so as to not hurt either of us and make the whole issue even bigger. He was clearly not happy about it, though. The final straw came during dinner. I sat with him, breaking my usual pattern of avoidance. My mother-in-law, visibly annoyed by my presence, started criticizing the way I set the table and served the food. She accused me of trying to make her look bad and not respecting her in her own home. My husband sat silently, his face growing pale as he listened to her insults. She said that I gave her less food because I wanted her to starve. Honestly, I served all of us an equal amount of food. She started saying that I broke her pot in the garden and did not bother to apologize. I told her that I did not break it, and she got so angry that she spilled an entire glass of water on my face. She was very brave that her son was not saying anything, so she'd get away with it, but my husband immediately came to my rescue and embraced me. It was the first time I heard him scream at his mother. He told her to not disrespect me, and there was no reason for her to throw the glass of water. It was just a pot, and if it was so important, he'd buy her a new one. I didn't know why I started crying, but I did. Maybe because I did not expect him to support me even then, but he did. After he consoled me and took me back to my room, my husband confronted his mother. I could hear from my room what they were talking about. He asked her why she was treating me this way and why she had been so harsh. Her response was defensive and dismissive, but it was enough. He finally saw what I had been enduring. He asked her to be honest and tell him what the problem was. She said that I was trying to keep her away from her son with my stupid dates, friends gatherings, and whatnot. She said that the marriage is only making her son more wife-centered, and it makes her feel very left out. It's all my fault, and I am doing these things intentionally to hurt her, to make her look like a bad person. My husband got really angry that she was still not coming to terms with her behavior. She was not ready to accept that she was wrong. She kept saying that whatever she did was for her son, and she'd not regret it. Now my husband wants to move out. It has been 2 weeks since this happened, and they fight with each other every day, and the more they fight, the more she taunts and insults me. I don't know what to do. Should we move out so that my husband can sleep at night in peace? Should we abandon his mother if we move out? Will she blame me that I snatched her son away from her? Should I even bother about her blaming me or what she thinks? I also see that my husband is very sad about his mom's behavior. Should I make peace with the situation for his sake or move out? There are so many questions and hardly any answers. If any of you can advise me, I'd be very grateful. Looking forward to your responses. Thanks in advance. Update 1. Hello everyone. First and foremost, I am very thankful for your suggestions. Thank you so much for being considerate of my situation and thinking from all perspectives while giving me your suggestions. I am here to update you about the situation. My husband stayed true to his promise and moved out. I tried to tell him not to do it. Some of you suggested that I must communicate with my mother-in-law that I don't plan to take her son away from her, so that's what I did. I sat her down and told her how I'm planning to build a family together, and just because I take her son out for some quality time together, that doesn't mean I'm taking him away from her. She listened to all of it patiently, but in the end, she just told me that I was turning things in my favor and trying to be a goodie. She screamed at me that I was doing anyone a favor by having this conversation with her. After my attempt failed, my husband decided that he would always be there for his mother when she needed him, financially or emotionally, but physically he won't be staying with her any longer. It's been almost a month since we moved out, and we've settled into our new routine. My mother-in-law calls often to check on her son, also begging him to come back, but she doesn't mention me or tell him that he should get me back too. It's like in her head she has completely cut me off from the family. My husband understands that my father gave me away during the wedding and he won't turn back to look at me again. That's how it has always been. So he's all I have. He wants to be there for me, but he also misses his mother more than anything. He misses the person his mother was. She did visit us once at our new place. She spoke to her son, brought him some food, spent time with him and left. She didn't speak to me, ask me about my well-being, or even look at me. I retired to my room and let them be, but my husband told me that he doesn't like how I'm being excluded in my own house and asked her to not visit again. He said he'd go visit her, but she needn't come. She blamed that on me too. I don't know how things got so bad. Now, my husband is questioning his judgments and blaming himself for everything. He hardly had anything to do with how things turned out. But a day won't go by without him thinking that maybe his decisions have led to more fights in the family. I told him that's not the case, but I still see the pain. My mother-in-law makes it very hard for him whenever he visits. He tells me that she keeps complaining about me. It's more about proving me wrong than spending time with her son. Now my husband doesn't want to visit her because it's become very difficult to handle her negativity. I am considering family counseling for the 3 of us. There would be another person who could tell us what is going wrong or help us figure out a way to stay together. What do you think? Should I do it or let things stay the way they are? Update 2. Another update for all those lovely people who sent warm and loving messages to me. Your suggestions have not gone unnoticed. So we decided to go with counseling. My mother-in-law was difficult at first, but my husband threatened her that if she didn't consider it, then he'd never step into her house, not even when she needs him. He was bluffing, he'd never do that, but my mother-in-law agreed and sat down for the first few sessions. It was great. The psychologist was able to help us with our issues. It went on for more than 3 months. You can see why I didn't leave an update sooner. My mother-in-law began talking with me again, though it was only 1 or 2 words per day. We went shopping like 2 strangers who were just walking together but not really spending the day together. My husband wanted us to do it, and both of us did it just for the sake of it. Also, there is something much more important. I'm pregnant. My husband knows it, but we've never told my mother-in-law yet. We didn't expect it. We thought we were being careful, but when God decides to give you a gift, He can surprise you whenever He wants, right? We are still fighting, but I am hoping that she'll take the pregnancy news well. Update 3. I can't thank the universe enough. We told my mother-in-law about the pregnancy last night and she was very happy. I took the first step and went to embrace her. I hugged her and told her if I had a son, I'd never want my future daughter-in-law to take him away from me. I didn't even bring him into this world yet, and I feel a strong sense of possessiveness. Boy or girl, I would love them immensely. I told her the same thing. When I wouldn't want anyone taking my child from me, why would I do that to another mother? I tried to explain to her clearly. She broke down. I thought I must have said something wrong, but she hugged me and apologized. She said that all good things in her life were snatched away from her, and she thought that my love for her son would overshadow her presence in his life. She thought he'd forget her. She had no one else. I understood where she came from. So did my husband. We consoled her and told her how much we loved her. I told her she was my mother too. She's the only mother I have now, like it or not, so I am not letting her go. It was very emotional, but we are now back again as a family. My husband and I just decided that we will be moving back to my mother-in-law again. We are happy. My husband is overjoyed. A child on the way and a mother back to being his, well, mother. We are so happy. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your prayers. Update 4. Quick and short update, we are still going strong. Almost a year it had been since my last update, and there had been no fights or arguments. We do quarrel sometimes, but nothing too big that we'd hurt each other. This feels so good. Also, I have a daughter. She is a doll, my doll. Being a mother has become so much easier thanks to my mother-in-law's support. She loves her granddaughter and we are going to get her baptized soon. It is a happy family, people. Thank you and stay blessed. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My fiancé is planning on leaving me to be in an open relationship with his coworker. I, 24F, had been with my fiancé, 27M, for 4 years, and he proposed to me on my birthday last year. I always thought our relationship was great and that we were unstoppable, but I guess that was wrong. Usually, he has always let me use his phone, for games or because my phone would be screwed up. Recently, he was being very distant and even getting upset if I asked for his phone. We're always open about our phones, and if the other would like to be sure if we haven't been disloyal, we were both okay with it. I shrugged it off as maybe he's planning something for my birthday since it's coming up. A couple of days ago, he asked me if we could try opening up the relationship. This took me by surprise because he's never been the type to get physical or emotional with anyone else but me. I tell him that I'm uncomfortable with the thought of that, and he kept explaining how it could build us up emotionally to see other people's perspectives on how we can improve our love. I continued telling him no and saying that it doesn't feel right. I never wanted to be with anyone else but him. He has been trying to convince me for the past day, but I didn't budge. He ended up saying, whatever, and going on a walk for a couple of hours. When he left, I cried my eyes out because it made me think he wasn't being loyal. Unlucky for him, he had left his phone on the counter in the kitchen, so I took it upon myself to check. To my horror, I saw my worst nightmare. He was messaging a coworker, we'll call her Kim, for a couple of weeks. Messages saying, I love you, and let's plan a little date together. I cried and continued reading. I saw that they were trying to plan a way to leave me or get an open relationship started. Seeing as though the open relationship plan failed, they started saying that he should leave me and they can be in an open relationship. I'm so hurt and distraught by this. I thought he would be with me through thick and thin, not to mention I have a daughter, 6, that has absolutely loved him and thought of him as her dad. I'm crushed and betrayed for both me and my daughter. She was going to be our flower girl and have the prettiest dress, and now I have to tell her everything. My worst nightmare is coming to fruition and I can't stop crying. I'm trying to be strong for her, but it's so hard. As I type this, I'm watching my daughter play with her dolls while watching TV, and my fiancé is upstairs playing a game. For now, I'm thinking of my next steps and staying strong for my girl. Edit. I know it's only been a couple of hours, but thank you everyone for your support so far. I'm taking everyone's advice and I do plan on leaving. I'm gonna come up with a plan to put all of his stuff out while he's working one day and completely cut him out. Also, a couple of questions I've seen that I should clarify on with his messages. He had asked me a couple of days ago to open the relationship and I told him no. I should have clarified that for the past day. He had been non-stop pestering me over opening the relationship, my fault. At the time of writing, I was so distraught. After asking me the first time, he told Kim what my answer was, and Kim had said, "You should just leave at this point, etc., etc." But he thought it was best to keep trying to convince me. Like I said, that was my bad. It was mostly Kim saying that he should leave. Also, some people may be confused at him leaving his phone while he left. We live in a wide-open rural area, and usually when he needs to blow off steam, he goes through the backyard into the woods that's a little down the yard. I never had a need to check his phone, but I trusted him at that time. He usually left to blow off steam or something. Again, I'm so sorry for any confusion during my distraught time of writing this, and thank you again. Update 1. So my previous post has blown up a bit, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the kind words, messages, and advice. I'm definitely not getting back with him. Last night while he slept in our bed, I messaged his sister, whom he doesn't have much of a good relationship with anyways, everything, and even sent her the screenshots. She was super apologetic and even said that she'll help me get all of his stuff packed and out of my house. I inherited this house from my grandfather when he passed away. Tomorrow he goes into work and that's when I'll be packing all of his stuff and sending his ass out the door. To everyone that was concerned about my daughter, I spoke with her this morning. We went to Starbucks together and I told her that me and him were going to separate. I told her in a lighter way, but this was a summary of what I said. She looked deeply upset but said that she understands and sometimes things don't work out. She hugged me and we had hot chocolate and cake pops together. I didn't tell her why we were breaking up, just said that it wasn't in the stars. So far today, me and her have just been playing and enjoying ourselves. I cried when we got home and she just gave me a kiss on the cheek and said, "I'll always love you, Mommy." I'm just sobbing my eyes out because I'm so happy and thankful to have the sweetest little girl on the planet. Sorry for any confusion in this post, if any. I'll be sure to update when all of this is said and done. Until then, I'm going to give my daughter my full attention today and laugh and play together. Update 2. Hello, people have Reddit. Sorry I didn't post an update yesterday. A lot had happened. So first off, I wanted to say thank you guys so much for the continued support. It means the absolute world to me, and I didn't expect any of this to blow up like it did. I've seen a couple of TikToks, so I'm very surprised. So here is the not-so-long-awaited update. So first off, around 6 a.m. when my ex had left, I texted his sister and a few friends to help move his stuff out. They got here after I had put my daughter on the bus for school, so between 8 to 9 a.m. We went in and got everything, all of his clothes, shoes, etc., and boxed it up and put it outside. We had finally gotten done around 2 p.m. He doesn't have much stuff, and the stuff he has that I bought that aren't clothes I'm keeping to do whatever I please with it. After we were done, his sister said that their parents were on standby after hearing what happened. I had made the group chat with his family while we were doing all the packing, and to say they were livid is an understatement. I also emailed his boss and an HR member. Every department where he works is assigned an HR member. They thanked me and said they will handle this accordingly. Then the show starts. I see his truck pull in the driveway and he looked pissed. He got out and slammed his door, cursing me out for him getting in trouble. Luckily my friends, 2 of them were guys, had gotten between us so he didn't do anything. He was screaming at me and his sister, calling us witches, and screaming at me more saying that he was only trying to improve our relationship. I told him I didn't care what he had to say. I wanted him gone. He huffed and then started asking where my daughter was so that he can speak with her. I didn't tell him that instead of riding the bus home, my dad picked her up. I let the school and bus driver know in advance. I told her that he was not speaking to my daughter and I want him gone. He got enraged and lunged towards me. My friends had held him back away from me, and that's when I called his parents because I knew he wouldn't leave easily. They came and started cursing at him, saying that they didn't raise him this way and that he is going to now be officially disowned, meaning he was cut out of the will and everything. He ended up just having a hissy fit on the ground like a little kid, stomping and screaming that I couldn't do this to him and that he still loves me. I told him, I don't care, leave. Eventually, his parents made him get his boxes and leave. As he was leaving, he told me, I swear I'll be back. I swear. I laughed and just walked back into my house. I'm working on getting a restraining order set in place and I hope to never see him or his lover ever again. My daughter is staying with my parents for the week to be sure that in case him or his lover come back, she won't see anything you shouldn't see. So far, nothing has happened and I got a brand new security system being set up as well as a Ring camera. If anything happens, I'll post another update, but hopefully it won't be anything bad. Update 3. Hey guys. So sorry I haven't done any form of update. It's been super stressful recently. Thank you all again for your lovely messages. It makes me so happy to see so much support for my situation. Luckily, my ex hasn't tried to come back, but a few days ago, his new girlfriend, the coworker, came to my door pounding on it. I obviously didn't answer, and since my car has been in the shop, she I guess assumed I was gone. I won't lie, it was kind of scary. A lot of you guys have been saying I should get an alarm system and a bunch of cameras around my house and such, and I completely agree that I need to get to it. I'm desperately looking for a job, and until I get one, I can't afford an alarm system, and I have nobody to stay with me and my daughter right now. Any money in my savings is for groceries, bills, etc. for me and my girl, and even that is running low. If anything happens, I'll update, but until then, I'm just trying to overcome this financial situation. Ciao. Update 4. Hey guys. It's been a long while and I'm sorry for not giving any updates. First off, I want to say thank you to everyone and your kind words. Me and my daughter are doing great and have never been better in the past couple months. I got a new job making a nice amount of money. I ended up selling my old home and moving away. I didn't move too far so that my daughter could still see her grandparents. She will still be going to the same school and such, so that's a relief. Right now, she's watching Bluey and eating some lunch. Some of you may be wondering how my daughter has felt recently with everything going on, and she's doing good. Now, back then, I knew she was upset and I had help from my mom get her into a child counseling. She absolutely loves her and my daughter thinks of her as a best friend. Luckily, I haven't ran into my ex or anything like that. So I've been very relieved to know that me and my girl are safe. I've been hearing things from mutual friends about how things have been going on his end, and karma definitely bit him in the butt. Recently, him and his girlfriend had broken up because she ended up pregnant and he didn't want any responsibility of the kid. He now works a fast food job making barely anything and can only afford a small, cramped apartment. Apparently, he relapsed into his drinking habits and even smokes more now. I guess ever since he lost his job, his life spiraled. All in all, things are good and life is great. I don't know if I'll update this ever again since the story is at a close, but maybe if something does happen, I'll do another post. For now, this is the end of the story. Thank you to everyone for your support. I couldn't believe internet strangers could put such a smile on my face. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I, 32M, have been dating my girlfriend, Lucy, 28F, for about a year now. When we first met, I didn't realize she had an identical twin sister, Amy. I come from a pretty wealthy family and run a successful tech company I founded in my 20s. Because of my job, I'm able to afford a very comfortable upper-class lifestyle. Nice cars, a big house, fancy vacations, expensive hobbies like boating, etc. Lucy doesn't come from a rich background and has lived paycheck to paycheck for most of her adult life. She works as a teacher but doesn't have a good salary. When we started dating, I made sure to pay for nice dinners, trips, shows, etc., so she could enjoy some of the finer things without having to stress about money. Over time, Lucy started hinting that her sister Amy was struggling financially as a single mom. Her ex wasn't paying child support consistently, and Amy had fallen behind on bills. I offered to help a few times by paying off Amy's debts, but Lucy declined, saying Amy was too proud to take donations. The relationship progressed and Lucy and I moved in together. After that, the hints about Amy's money problems got more frequent. Randomly over dinner, Lucy would mention Amy had her electricity shut off that day or that Amy's son needed school supplies, clothes, etc., but she couldn't afford them. Lucy would always get emotional and worried about her sister's issues, and I tried to comfort her. Eventually, I just started sending Amy money directly for her bills, usually a few $1,000s here and there. I can easily afford it and I like helping loved ones. I figured this would ease Lucy's mind about her sister struggling. However, Amy started texting and calling me frequently with financial emergencies like needing fast cash to fix her car or take her kid to the ER, or things like that. It was multiple times a week at this point. She pays me back occasionally, but most of the time she doesn't. I genuinely don't care about being paid back for helping family, so I didn't think much of it. The other day, Lucy casually mentioned she and Amy were planning a big family trip to Hawaii for their 30th birthday next year. I was surprised since I knew Amy was strapped for cash, so I asked if she had gotten some money recently. Lucy laughed and said Amy hasn't struggled financially in a while, thanks to me. I realized that all those urgent money requests from Amy were made up just to get cash out of me. I was shocked and pissed off. I told Lucy that Amy scamming me for money wasn't cool. Lucy said that I was wealthy, so what's the big deal? But I said that wasn't the point. The principle of the lie is what made me upset. I also warned Lucy that if Amy keeps taking advantage of me for cash, I will not be contributing as much money towards special things for Lucy like trips, jewelry, etc. This sparked a huge fight where Lucy accused me of actually being cheap and broke compared to how I presented myself. Not at all true. And that she deserves luxury perks for dating someone rich. I disagreed firmly and said if she wants luxury, she has to work for it herself. We fought bitterly for a while, and I came to my parents' house to calm my mind. Lucy texted on my phone saying I was the reason for all this, as I caused this by letting Amy take advantage in the first place, so I'm the reason because of which I was in the situation no matter what. Update 1. After the big fight with Lucy over her twin sister Amy basically scamming me for money, I left Lucy's place to cool off at my parents' house. I was just so pissed about the dishonesty and Lucy's entitled behavior. I needed some distance. My dad could tell I was in a bad mood the minute I walked in the door. He asked what was up, and after trying to brush it off, I finally told him about the situation with Lucy and Amy. My dad's a great listener and pretty wise when it comes to relationship stuff, so I laid the whole story out about the money transfers. Dad asked some thoughtful questions, letting me vent and get the frustration out. When I finished explaining, he sighed and said, "This is a complicated situation." He asked if Lucy knows for sure Amy was lying about the emergency money needs. I said I honestly wasn't sure if Lucy was in on the scam or getting manipulated too. I complained to my dad that either way, Lucy feels entitled to expensive gifts and trips and perks just for dating a wealthy guy, and now she expects me to fund her sister indefinitely. Dad nodded and said Lucy's financial expectations seem unreasonable given she doesn't want to build wealth herself. He asked if Lucy displays a level of materialism or greed that worries me long term. I sighed and had to admit she does focus a lot on money, both earning it and spending it. Dad gently pointed out that he and my mom supported their own interests and financial needs for decades without help, so that's the type of life partner he imagines me wanting. Someone ambitious and independent. He asked how much I know about Amy's situation overall. Her job, relationship history, spending habits, current goals, etc. I realized I actually knew very little, mostly just what Lucy told me over time. Dad said I need to get to know Amy myself before deciding if she's manipulating me or actually needing temporary help. I said the last thing I want is more contact with Amy. Dad laughed but said if I'm handing out money, I have the right to understand the background. He offered to have lunch with Amy. I was curious what Amy would say about the whole money issue, so I reached out to set up lunch. Amy instantly agreed, saying she'd love to meet my family. I was thinking she probably just wants to get more cash at lunchtime. I went with my dad but avoided small talk with Amy, still angry about the Hawaii trip reveal. Dad warmly introduced himself and asked Amy about her job, life as a single mom, relationship with Lucy, and her take on borrowing money from me that past year. Amy put on a big show. She cried, telling dramatic stories about getting evicted while pregnant, selling valuables to afford diapers, constant calls from debt collectors, and fear over providing basics for her son. She praised me as being a saint for helping them. My dad kindly and subtly kept getting more details about Amy's story. He'd ask about the type of home and area she was allegedly evicted from versus what Lucy's told me about where Amy lives, or why she wasn't on state assistance programs as a single mom if money was so possibly tight. Amy got nervous quickly, reversing her own facts and mixing up details. I directly asked why she and Lucy planned a 5-star Hawaii trip if she was broke and struggling so severely that whole time. Finally, Amy broke down and admitted most of the sob stories were exaggerated or fabricated. She defended this by tearfully saying she just didn't know how else to help Lucy have some financial freedom too for things like trips and fun stuff. Dad calmly discussed that honesty and trust are mandatory in close relationships, financial or otherwise. Taking advantage breaks both, even if intentions are good. I added that I don't mind helping loved ones in actual need, but lies don't go with me, especially repeated manipulation. Amy apologized for deceiving me and tried to rationalize it. She swore the trip was Lucy's idea, and she just went along with it at first because it sounded fun but now realizes how bad it seems given my recent help money-wise. I said just because someone has wealth doesn't mean their assistance or generosity should be abused or taken for granted. Dad suggested the three of us go together to a financial advisor to look objectively at Amy's budget, job, and expenses and see what's actually reasonable for her to afford day-to-day or save for trips, rather than create drama trying to fund things. Amy looked anxious but agreed that's probably wise. She said she wants to become more responsible and self-sufficient. We made an appointment with an advisor my family uses who specializes in long-term financial planning. After Amy left, Dad said he believed she genuinely felt cornered money-wise as a single parent and made fear-based choices, combined with Lucy's pressure for trips and fun. The temptation to manipulate me just built up gradually. However, now that everything is exposed, if Amy attends budgeting classes and sticks to the financial advice plan, she should be able to live within realistic means without continuing to deceive anyone. I still feel wary toward her but also feel bad for her trying to keep up impossible lies. Dad says it's up to me if I ultimately want to forgive Lucy. I'm still frustrated with Lucy and avoiding her calls for now. I know I need to have a serious talk about why she defended Amy scamming me instead of showing concern about the betrayal of trust, and also discuss why she fixates on status, gifts, and trips so much from guys instead of building her own security. I just have no idea how to have that conversation usefully without Lucy calling me controlling and cheap. I'll give the financial advisor sessions with Amy a few weeks to play out before deciding if I should break up with Lucy. This money deception stuff recently is making me reconsider a lot about how much she truly values me versus valuing my lifestyle and net worth. I wish I had realized that sooner. It sucks to feel like you have to buy a partner's priority and affection, so I still have some soul-searching to do on if this relationship is actually healthy or rooted too much in greed. I'm going to take this slow before making any permanent decisions. For now, I'm avoiding seeing Lucy in person at all, but eventually we'll have to talk through everything with level heads. I'm interested in anyone's thoughts or advice on how to handle this going forward too, so let me know. Update 2. It's been about 3 weeks since I stopped seeing my girlfriend Lucy over her deceitful sister, Amy, manipulating me for money. I'm still keeping my distance from Lucy for now while I figure out if this relationship can realistically work long-term. The financial advising sessions with Amy were going well so far. She seemed to be getting her actual budget and expenses under control. I was still confused whether to fully forgive Lucy though. Her mindset around wealth and tendency to defend Amy taking advantage of people bugs me a lot. I can't shake feeling like Lucy is only with me for the lifestyle versus genuine connection. Trying to clear my head, I drove downtown today to grab lunch at this expensive cafe I really like. They have amazing paninis and tomato basil soup in a nice open atmosphere downtown. It reminds me of a cool bistro in Italy I visited a few years ago. Real fresh, quality ingredients. As I walked in, I instantly spotted Lucy sitting at a table by the window. My heart sank for a minute before I realized she was chatting it up with some other guy in a business suit. This unknown dude looked a bit older than me, maybe late 30s. He had on an expensive watch, some fancy leather dress shoes. He definitely seemed well off. I stood there in shock, watching Lucy laugh flirtatiously and touch this guy's arm a few times. Then, to my disgust, he pulled out a black credit card to pay the bill, and Lucy smiled really big. The hostess asked if I was waiting for takeout or wanted to sit down. Still processing Lucy's betrayal, I blurted out without thinking that I changed my mind and needed to leave. I pushed my way out the door to my car, hands shaking with anger and disbelief. How could Lucy pull this crap? I got out of there furious and found myself subconsciously driving straight to my parents' house. Dad was home and asked what happened. I told my dad about catching Lucy on a date with some business guy. I described the fancy watch, shoe brands. I told him that the dude took out his elite credit card to show off his wealth and how Lucy was extremely impressed by all that. Dad tried calming me down, saying there could be a reasonable explanation. He asked if I actually saw them kiss or hold hands romantically. Maybe it was a friendly lunch or even a business connection type of thing. I shook my head adamantly. I tell Lucy she's beautiful on a regular basis and touch her affectionately all the time. She was giving this random dude flirty eyes and accidental hand grazing like they were on an intimate date. Plus, he paid with a black credit card in a bragging kind of way. Apparently, wasting my money wasn't good enough. She already has a new sponsor lined up. Why else would she be at a fancy restaurant, dressed up nice, making eyes at this guy? Dad again pointed out I don't actually know this man or his relationship to Lucy. I hadn't even spoken to her in weeks. For all we know, this could have been a friendly mentor in her industry or something simple. Perhaps I was misreading cues through a lens of anger. By this point, I was seeing red flags and couldn't even process logical perspectives. I felt certain Lucy was throwing herself at the first rich guy she found to fund her glam lifestyle again, even after all my help and patience and love. I said angrily that I refused to be taken for a fool. I would directly ask Lucy about this sketchy lunch meeting and demand the real story. If she confirms dating this dude so fast, we are over for good. No negotiation. You can't treat people like disposable bank accounts and get away with it. All her talk about loving me so much was total garbage. Dating me was nothing but access to vacations, fancy restaurants, and material things. Now that I cut her off financially, she immediately found a replacement wallet without looking backwards. And this is while she still has keys to my freaking house from just moving in together. Unbelievable. Dad kept trying to be the voice of reason, asking me to calm down and get more facts before accusing anyone of ill intent or destroying relationships. He gently said we all handle feelings of betrayal differently, but wisdom is rarely found in heated reactions. I felt like my gut knew exactly why Lucy was whining and dining Mr. Rich Guy, even if she tried downplaying it later with lame excuses. I couldn't wait to call her out. Finally, Dad told me if I was dead set on confronting Lucy tonight, he would at least come along as emotional support and a neutral mediator to make sure things didn't spiral out irrationally. He knows how much I cared for Lucy under all this anger. I agreed reluctantly to having Dad there, mostly so I could vent to someone instantly if Lucy tried denying her gold-digging ways. I felt so crushed, catching her essentially proving my worst fears correct. She wanted my money, not my heart, this whole time. We drove over to Lucy's place in intense silence. I banged angrily on the door the second we walked up. Dad touched my shoulder, signaling for me to chill the out. When Lucy answered, surprised to see me and my dad standing there, I grimaced. I barreled past her angrily, demanding answers about her lunch date. Who is that guy? How does she know him? Why were they so flirty? Did she ask him to pay the whole tab? Lucy looked confused, asking what on earth I was talking about. I raged that I saw her today at the cafe downtown with some business suit dude, acting romantic over the table. Explain that. Dad stepped in, saying there was clearly miscommunication and misunderstanding happening. Let's sit and discuss this calmly instead of shouting accusations. Lucy started tearing up, saying she has no clue what cafe meetup I was referring to. Today, she hadn't been downtown in weeks, actually, since before our big fight. I inspected her face and didn't see any trace of deception, but I still felt certain about what I witnessed. I described the guy's looks in close detail. Lucy shook her head helplessly. Dad suggested maybe I did see Lucy's twin, Amy, out to lunch today instead. After all, identical twins can easily be mixed up. He asked Lucy gently if Amy perhaps started dating someone new she was excited about. Lucy said that yes, Amy had gone on a first date downtown today with some businessman guy she met online. Lucy helped her pick out an outfit this morning. My stomach dropped, realizing Dad was likely right about the mistake in identity. Amy would definitely flirt openly with some rich potential hookup online. I felt awful, realizing I had yelled at innocent Lucy. I started tearfully apologizing for assuming the worst of her and making a dramatic scene. Lucy cut me off, icy though. She said she cannot move past this extreme breach of trust and explosiveness from me. I clearly don't know her well at all if I could imagine her openly scheming for money with random men. She felt entirely disrespected. I begged desperately for another chance, saying this whole thing was an awful misunderstanding because the twins look identical. I should have confronted Amy first about the guy before accusing Lucy. I was just overwhelmed by our recent fights about financial views and saw red flags, making assumptions. But Lucy folded her arms angrily, saying this misunderstanding was my subconscious speaking volumes. I apparently assume any woman around wealth must be using people. She said my willingness to believe she was some girl throwing herself on men to climb social ladders proved I had zero faith in her character or respect for her independence. She refused to date someone who makes such nasty, flawed assumptions at the first hint of confusion. I looked desperately at my dad for help mediating. Dad seriously asked Lucy if there was any path forward she felt comfortable with to repair broken trust. Lucy maintained that she cannot imagine ever feeling safe with me again if ugly accusations erupt constantly without proof. And she said frankly, it's clear I need some therapy to handle dislike around people with different financial backgrounds than me mixing in relationships. I have some deep anger to work through. I kept pleading with Lucy to just give me a chance to redeem myself and work on my underlying issues around money and relationships. I was almost hysterical, promising to do therapy, couples counseling, whatever it took to undo the damage I had caused by wrongly accusing her. My dad stepped in and gently asked Lucy if she could find it in her heart to allow me an opportunity to rebuild trust once emotions were not running so heatedly. He tried to explain to Lucy that I had indeed behaved impulsively and spoken due to suspicion due to our recent fight. However, my intense reaction also shows how deeply I care for her. I kept looking at Lucy as she listened to my dad. Her expression softened slightly as she admitted she still has love for me below her anger and hurt. She said my behavior was extremely difficult and being drunk on love is no excuse for such instability regarding accusations. She will need to take time to process her emotions and decide if she has the energy to walk the long road of rebuilding fractured relationship foundations. I started pleading again that I would carry 100% of the blame and do 100% of the work needed so long as Lucy was open to allowing me to demonstrate genuine change after processing things fully. Dad reminded me it was not fair to demand an answer this instant, as Lucy likely needs reflection time given the intensity of conflict tonight. Pressuring her forgiveness timeline would only communicate that my priority is overlooking personal guilt quickly, not thinking about Lucy's healing. I apologized again and said Lucy is welcome to take any time she needs. Dad exchanged contact info with Lucy in case she wanted an input while determining next steps. We then left to give her recovery space. In the car, Dad said he was proud of me for allowing Lucy breathing room rather than continuing to make demands in order to self-soothe. He said if I stick to the personal work needed to become less reactive, there is always hope for reconciliation down the road, either with Lucy or a wiser version of myself in new relationships. I wiped tears, feeling partially sorry and partially hopeful. Thanks to my dad's mentoring, his support kept me stable. I must nurture unconditional understanding if I want Lucy as my soulmate. That starts with the development of my own growth first and foremost. Update 3. It's been about 5 weeks now since the tragic fight where I accused my girlfriend Lucy of using men for money after mixing up seeing her twin sister Amy on a date. Lucy was angry at my assumptions. She broke up with me because she felt I didn't trust her. I had suggested she was only interested in dating me for money. This upset Lucy and made her think I have no faith in her or her character. I begged her to give me another chance, but she said she needs some time apart to decide if our relationship is worth saving after a show. I don't really trust her. I have been keeping my distance from Lucy like she asked, even though it's hard. I started going to therapy to deal with some of my issues. Getting angry too easily, having trust issues, and unhealthy ways of coping. I know my bad relationships in the past made me unfairly assume the worst of Lucy. I blew up at her because of my own biases. Now I need to change those thought patterns so I don't sabotage future good relationships like I did with Lucy. My dad keeps checking in on me to see how I'm doing after the breakup. He tells me not to give up hope since Lucy didn't officially end our relationship forever. She just said she needs some time alone to think without me pressuring her, so she can decide if our relationship can recover from what I accused her of. She hasn't permanently broken up with me yet. I haven't heard anything from Lucy since our fight that night. I've wanted to ask her to meet up and discuss things so many times, but I've stopped myself because I don't want to cross any lines while she's thinking everything over. However, just waiting around not knowing where we stand has been really painful and difficult to deal with. I don't know if Lucy is going to forgive me or if she even should after the way I acted. I wouldn't fault her for ending the relationship for good. I'm hoping she can see that my ugly behavior stems from being hurt in previous relationships. It's not a reflection of how I actually see her. Those issues are what I'm now working on in therapy, but I understand if she feels it's too much to move past and wants to walk away after the accusations I made. Today, after an emotionally tiring therapy session, I felt exhausted. I stopped by a nearly empty coffee shop on my way home. As I was lost in thought, I didn't notice someone else walk in. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice behind me say, "Hey you!" I was surprised and turned around fast, nearly spilling my hot drink. It was Lucy. She looked a little unsure but calm. I worried she wanted to meet so she could tell me in person that she was ending our relationship for good. That would crush me, but I told myself I wouldn't try to argue with whatever decision she made. We stood there frozen for a second. No matter what Lucy decided about our relationship, things could never go back to how easy they used to be between us. Too much hurt had damaged what we once had. The trust we used to share so naturally was now broken. I had only myself to blame for starting that erosion of faith in our relationship. Finally, Lucy pointed to a small table in the corner by the window and asked, "Can we talk for a bit?" I nodded, feeling suddenly very thirsty. We sat down across from each other at the table. She didn't speak at first, so I said she looked thoughtful and I hoped she had been doing all right since our fight. Lucy gave a little smile and said she has been reflecting a lot lately about relationships and personal growth. She decided to take a break from dating and guys for a while. She thought it would help her focus on what really matters instead of surface-level drama. I was afraid this meant she saw me as too dramatic and didn't want to date me anymore. Sensing how anxious I felt, she reached out and touched my hand gently. "That doesn't mean we can't make things right between us, though, if you've been working on yourself too." I rushed to promise her that things were different now. I rambled on about how therapy is helping me explore why I had that outburst and how to helpfully discuss feelings instead of lashing out. I told her my therapist even wants to meet with Lucy periodically if she's open to it to help facilitate more empathetic understanding between us. I stumbled over my words, trying to assure her things had changed. I assured Lucy that what happened was due to my own unhealthy issues that I unfairly projected onto her. It had nothing to do with who Lucy really is. I should have communicated my worries calmly instead of accusing her based on past situations that had no real relation to our relationship. Lucy looked into her coffee mug for a while, thinking before responding softly. She said she knows my behavior came from my own inner pain, not any actual wrongdoing on her part. Over time and with insight, she was able to understand that. She also apologized for her harsh words that night, admitting we both handled the conflict poorly. We both got defensive right away instead of first trying to understand each other and made cutting remarks. I was scared that anything I said might ruin this fragile opportunity Lucy was extending. When she looked up at me again, now they only had warmth and tired hope in them. She admitted that her breaking things off that night was an instinct to protect herself because she felt overwhelmed emotionally. But with time and space, she realized what her deeper feelings were. I started quietly crying with relief and gratitude, realizing Lucy was willing to reconnect with me. I sincerely told her I will spend every day showing my loyalty and regaining her trust. Being apart this past month devastated me down to my core. I can't picture going on permanently without Lucy in my life, without getting to see her smile that lights me up inside. She then gave me her playful grin for the first time since we split. She said she missed my sappy romantic poetry about her. She gently wiped the tears from my cheeks and added that life felt empty without having my arms to come home to. Her days lacked sparkle and laughter without me there the past few weeks. She said she didn't fully feel like herself without my company. In response, I kissed her hand and asked if she wanted to come over for dinner that night so we could talk more about how to move forward and strengthen our relationship again. She agreed right away. We sat talking more easily again for a little while longer before leaving the cafe hand in hand. I felt extremely thankful for this second chance to show Lucy I could be trusted. When we got to Lucy's car parked on the street, she paused and turned to me before driving off. She whispered that when two people are meant to be together, nothing can truly break that bond forever. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I divorced my husband the day after our wedding because he smashed my face into our cake after I told him not to. Then his whole family says I'm overreacting. I really need some perspective here because I'm starting to feel like I'm going crazy with everyone telling me I'm overreacting. I'm not sure if I'm the a-hole in this situation, but this has been eating me up inside and I don't know who else to talk to. I met Jake about 4 years ago at my cousin's birthday party. He was charming, funny, and we hit it off right away. We started dating, and things moved pretty quickly. He was always the life of the party, constantly joking around and making everyone laugh. I loved that about him at first, how he could light up a room and make everyone feel comfortable. After about 3 years together, he proposed. It was during a vacation we took to this little beach town. Nothing huge, just a nice dinner and a walk on the beach where he got down on one knee. I said yes immediately. I was so happy and excited to start planning our future together. Looking back, there were signs I should have paid more attention to. Jake had this way of sometimes taking jokes too far. Like this one time when we were at his friend's birthday, he pushed his face into his own birthday cake as a joke and everyone laughed. But the birthday guy was clearly embarrassed. Or when he replaced his mom's sugar with salt on April Fool's Day, and she ended up having to throw away an entire batch of cookies she was making for some church event. She was pissed, but he just laughed it off. I always brushed these things off because they seemed harmless enough, and he was always so apologetic afterward if anyone got genuinely upset. He'd say things like, "I was just trying to make everyone laugh," or "It's just a joke. Don't be so serious." And I believed him. I thought he just got carried away sometimes, but meant well. It all started going downhill a few months before the wedding. I noticed Jake watching these stupid prank videos on his phone all the time. He would laugh his ass off at these videos showing brides getting humiliated, their faces smashed into cakes, embarrassing photos of them being shown to everyone during speeches, grooms pretending to drop the rings or run away at the altar, that kind of shit. One night, we were sitting on the couch and he kept showing me these videos, laughing hysterically while I just sat there, not finding any of it funny. I immediately told him I didn't want anything like that at our wedding. I was very clear. I said I'd spent a lot of money on my makeup and dress and didn't want either ruined. Plus, I didn't think publicly humiliating your new spouse was a great way to start a marriage. He just laughed and said, "Don't worry, babe. I'm not planning anything like that. I know you're too uptight for that kind of stuff." The uptight comment annoyed me, but I let it slide because at least he seemed to understand that I didn't want any pranks at our wedding. I believed him, but over the next few weeks I started noticing weird shit. He kept having these hushed phone calls with his friends. He would immediately hang up or change the subject when I walked into the room. At first, I thought maybe he was planning some sort of surprise for me, like a honeymoon thing or something. Then he suddenly wanted to be involved in wedding decisions he previously couldn't care less about, especially the cake and the photographer. At the time, I was just happy he was showing interest in the wedding planning because before that, he'd left everything to me. I thought maybe he was finally taking our wedding seriously and wanted to be more involved. I was actually happy about it. But then I started noticing strange comments from his friends. When we were at a dinner with his best friend Tom and his girlfriend, Tom kept making these weird comments about how the wedding would be one to remember and go down in history. They'd look at each other and snicker, and Jake would kick him under the table. When I asked what was so funny, they'd just say, "Inside joke," and change the subject. Another red flag happened when we went for our cake tasting. Jake kept asking weird questions about the sturdiness of the cake and how much weight the frosting could hold. The baker looked confused, and I just assumed he didn't know much about cakes. He also insisted on a certain type of thick frosting that would photograph well. I was just happy he was participating, so I went along with it. About 2 weeks before the wedding, Jake's brother Frank came over for dinner. Frank has always been the complete opposite of Jake. Quiet, thoughtful, and serious. We were talking about the wedding plans, and Frank asked if we were doing any special traditions. Before I could answer, Jake made some comment about special surprises and winked at Frank. Frank didn't seem amused and asked what he meant. Jake just brushed it off, but Frank gave him this long, hard look that I didn't understand at the time. The day before the wedding, I had this weird feeling in my gut that something was off. Couldn't shake it. I pulled Jake aside after the rehearsal dinner and specifically reminded him that if he pulled any kind of prank at our wedding, especially anything that would ruin my appearance or embarrass me, I would seriously reconsider our relationship. He got all defensive and was like, "Jesus, you're paranoid. I already told you I'm not doing anything." Then he made me feel guilty by saying I was ruining the mood before our wedding by assuming the worst of him. I felt bad for not trusting him, but obviously my instincts were right. The morning of the wedding was hectic but exciting. My bridesmaids and mom helped me get ready. My makeup artist spent almost 2 hours on my face, and I felt beautiful. My dress was perfect. I'd saved for months to afford it, and it fit like a glove after 3 separate fittings. Everyone kept telling me how gorgeous I looked, and I was so excited to see Jake's face when I walked down the aisle. The ceremony went perfectly. Jake looked handsome in his tux, and he actually teared up when I walked down the aisle, which made me cry too. We said our vows, exchanged rings, and had our first kiss as a married couple. Everything felt magical, and I thought all my worries had been for nothing. Then came the reception. Everything was going great at first. We had our first dance. The speeches were lovely, though Jake's best man, Tom, made a few comments about Jake's sense of humor that made me a bit nervous. And the food was amazing. Then it was time for the cake cutting. The cake was beautiful. 3 tiers with white fondant and these delicate sugar flowers that matched my bouquet. Everyone gathered around to watch us cut it together. The photographer was positioned right in front of us to capture the moment. Jake and I held the knife together and made the first cut. The crowd cheered, and I was smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. Then it happened. As I was about to feed Jake a small piece of cake, I felt his hand firmly on the back of my head. But here's the thing. This isn't about cake. It's about the fact that I clearly stated a boundary multiple times. He promised he wouldn't cross it, and then he deliberately did exactly what I asked him not to do in front of everyone we know on what was supposed to be one of the most important days of our lives. How am I supposed to trust him about anything else? If he can lie to my face about this and then humiliate me for his amusement, what else will he do? What other promises will he break? What if we have kids someday and he thinks it's funny to embarrass them? And instead of genuinely apologizing, he's telling me I'm the problem for not finding my own humiliation funny. Yef that. The day after the wedding, Jake finally came home to our apartment. He acted like everything was normal, like he expected me to just get over it. When I told him I was serious about the divorce, he got angry. He called me ungrateful, said I had no sense of humor, and that I was ruining his life over a stupid prank. He didn't even attempt to understand my perspective. I spent that night at my best friend Megan's place. I couldn't stand being around Jake anymore. I told her everything that had happened, and unlike everyone else, she actually understood why I was upset. She agreed that it wasn't about the cake itself, but about the complete disregard for my feelings and boundaries. Jake's brother, Frank, is literally the only other person who seems to understand and support my decision. I'm going through with a divorce or maybe an annulment since we've only been married for like 2 days, which someone mentioned might be possible. So, am I the a-hole for wanting to divorce my husband because he pushed my face into our wedding cake after I specifically asked him not to? Update. Wow, wasn't expecting this to blow up. Thank you for all the responses and support. Sorry for not replying to comments. Things have been pretty chaotic, and I've been trying to process everything that's happened. I've read all your comments though, and they've really helped me feel like I'm not crazy for feeling the way I do. Several people suggested getting an annulment instead of a divorce. Don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. Probably because my brain has been a mess. But yes, that's the plan now. I spoke with a lawyer friend who said that given how short the marriage has been and the circumstances, an annulment should be possible. Haven't filed yet, but will be doing so in the next few weeks. Should be much easier than going through a whole divorce since we've been married for such a short time. And honestly, the marriage feels like it was a sham anyway. A lot of people asked about the honeymoon. We were supposed to leave the day after the wedding for a 2-week trip to Hawaii that we'd been planning for months. Obviously, that didn't happen. Jake actually tried to convince me that we should still go, saying it would give us time to work things out and that it was already paid for anyway. As if I'd want to spend 2 weeks trapped in a hotel room with someone who just humiliated me. I told him to go by himself if he wanted to, but he didn't. So, now we have to deal with getting refunds or credit for all that, too. What a mess. So, here's what happened after my original post. The day after I wrote it, I went to Jake's apartment. Technically our apartment, but it doesn't feel like mine anymore, to collect my stuff. I've been staying at my best friend Megan's place in the meantime. I took up Frank's offer to help me, which turned out to be a good call. I was nervous about seeing Jake again, but having Frank there made me feel safer. We arrived around midday when Jake texted me he'd be home. The moment we walked in, I could tell Jake was surprised to see Frank with me. He looked like he hadn't slept much, which made 2 of us. Jake immediately started with the "it was just a prank" shit again and kept saying he didn't mean to hurt me. He tried to hug me when I first walked in, but I stepped back. He followed me around the apartment as I started collecting my things, saying stuff like, "Come on, babe, don't be like this, and we can work through this. We just need to talk." But all I could think about was how he'd already broken my trust once and lied straight to my face. So why would I believe anything he says now? When Jake saw that Frank was actually helping me pack, not trying to talk sense into me like he probably expected, he completely lost it. His face turned this weird shade of red, and he started yelling about how Frank was poisoning me against him and trying to steal me away. Frank just calmly told him, "She made up her own mind. You did this yourself." Then Jake and Frank got into this huge argument where Frank brought up all the shit Jake had done to him when they were kids. Things I hadn't even heard about before. Jake just told him to grow a pair and get over it, because it happened forever ago. Pretty rich coming from someone who clearly never grew up himself. At one point, Jake tried to physically block me from taking a box of my books, saying that we needed to sit down and talk about this like adults. The irony of him talking about acting like an adult after what he'd done wasn't lost on me. Frank stepped between us and told Jake to back off, which led to more yelling. I just continued packing while they argued. Jake kept trying to talk to me directly, but Frank basically acted as a buffer and made sure I could get my things without being harassed. Took about 2 hours to get everything I needed. I left a lot of stuff behind that I can get later or just replace. And the whole time, Jake alternated between trying to apologize, getting angry, and accusing Frank of turning me against him. When we finally left, Jake slammed the door so hard I thought he might break it. I heard something crash inside as we walked to the car. I'm guessing he threw something. Frank helped me get everything to Megan's place where I've been staying for the past few days. Later, I found out from a mutual friend that Jake's been telling his family and friends that this is all Frank's fault, that he's been trying to steal me from Jake for years, and that he finally found his opportunity. This is completely ridiculous for so many reasons. Frank and I have always had a friendly but distant relationship. We'd see each other at family events and get along fine, but we've never been particularly close. The idea that he's been plotting to steal me is absurd. Jake's just looking for someone to blame other than himself. Oh, and my family has been almost as bad as his. They've been spamming me with messages about how we should try therapy and not throw away a marriage over one mistake. My mom even had the nerve to say, "Every marriage has problems. You can't just run away at the first sign of trouble." As if deliberately humiliating your spouse on your wedding day after promising not to is just a normal marriage problem. They only stopped when I threatened to cut them off, too. I told them that if they couldn't support me through this, then I didn't need them in my life right now. That finally shut them up. It's been about a week since the wedding now, and things have calmed down a bit. I'm still staying at Megan's place while I look for an apartment of my own. Jake has stopped texting me constantly, though he still sends the occasional message asking me to reconsider or telling me I'm throwing away something good over nothing. I've mostly been ignoring him. I had a meeting with a lawyer about the annulment. She also advised me to save all the texts and messages where Jake admits to what he did just in case he tries to contest it. Frank has also offered to provide a statement if needed, which is really nice of him. Speaking of Frank, a lot of people in the comments suggested I should date him instead, which made me laugh. But so many people mentioned that Frank might have liked me. So I thought, why not test him? This would have been just a test to see whether Frank had ulterior motives to help me or not. After all, he's been kinder to me through this whole ordeal than my actual husband was. So, after we got my stuff from Jake's place and dropped it off at Megan's, I awkwardly asked Frank if he might want to get coffee sometime. Just the two of us. He very politely turned me down and told me he's already seeing someone. A woman he met at work about 6 months ago. He was really nice about it, said he was flattered, but that he thought I probably needed some time to heal from everything that happened before jumping into anything new. He also said it would make the whole situation with Jake even more complicated, which is fair. Honestly, this made me respect him even more because it showed he wasn't helping me with any ulterior motives. He was just being a decent human being. We agreed to stay friends, and he's checked in on me a couple of times since then to make sure I'm doing okay. I told Frank about this post, and he said he read through some of the comments. He said they made his day and appreciated all the support from internet strangers. He especially liked the comments where people were telling me that he loves me. Gave him a good chuckle. As for what's next, I'm focusing on taking care of myself right now. I've been going to work. Took a couple of days off after the wedding, but couldn't take more time. Looking for an apartment and trying to process everything that's happened. I'm thinking about seeing a therapist to help me work through all this. Not to save my marriage like my family wants, but to help me deal with the feelings of betrayal and humiliation. This will probably be my last update on this situation. The annulment is in process. I'm moving on with my life, and I just want to put this whole mess behind me and move forward. Thank you all for your support. It really means a lot to know that there are people out there who understand why I'm upset and don't think I'm overreacting. Edit. To those calling my story fake because I tested Frank. Whatever. I was acting on what many commenters suggested, and I figured asking once wouldn't hurt anyone. I'm not in the best state of mind right now, and I probably won't be checking this account anymore. I hope my story can at least help others recognize toxic behavior in their own relationships, regardless of gender. Edit 2. A couple people asked about the photographer and the photos. Yes, he took pictures of the whole cake incident. No, I haven't seen them and don't want to. Jake's friend, Tom, hired the photographer. Another red flag I missed. Jake insisted his friend knew a guy who would give us a good deal. So I'm guessing Jake has the photos. He can do whatever he wants with them. I don't care anymore. Wishing you all the best. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I worked remotely to take care of my stepson who injured his back. Then I overheard him bragging to his mom about faking his injury to make me run around like a servant. A week ago, I switched to working remotely so I could help care for my stepson, who supposedly injured his back in a work accident. My stepson is 25 and has been living independently since he finished trade school 5 years ago. He's been working as an electrician and renting an apartment about an hour away from us. I've known him for 6 years, and I've been married to his father for 4 of those years. When I first met his father, my stepson kept his distance. His parents had finalized their divorce just 18 months earlier, and he wasn't ready to see his dad with someone new. Our first few encounters were awkward. He would respond to my questions with one-word answers and avoid making eye contact. During family dinners, he positioned himself as far away from me as possible. Once, when I offered to help him move some furniture into his first apartment after trade school, he specifically asked his father to come alone instead. Over time, we built a decent relationship. Nothing extraordinary, but respectful. He began to acknowledge my presence at family gatherings, occasionally asked about my job and healthcare administration, and even remembered my birthday last year with a store-bought card. That changed 3 months ago when he visited for a weekend and got into a heated argument with his father. They were in the garage looking at my husband's latest motorcycle restoration project when their voices grew louder. I remained in the kitchen, not wanting to intrude, but could hear the increasing tension. My stepson stormed out of the garage, grabbed his overnight bag, and left without saying goodbye. My husband told me later that our son had accused him of caring more about his new marriage than he ever did about his first one. He claimed his father had always prioritized his personal hobbies over family time, which ultimately drove his mother away. The main issue in my husband's previous marriage was his obsession with restoring vintage motorcycles. He spent weekends and evenings in the garage working on his projects, often missing school events and family gatherings. His ex-wife complained constantly about being neglected while raising their son, mostly on her own. She wanted him to participate more in family activities, but he insisted his hobby might eventually provide extra income if he could sell the restored bikes. He would spend hundreds of dollars on parts each month, tracking down rare components for specific models from the 1960s and 70s. He belonged to 3 different motorcycle restoration clubs and attended weekend meetups twice a month. During summer months, he participated in motorcycle shows that often required overnight trips to neighboring states. Meanwhile, his ex-wife managed their son's education, medical appointments, and extracurricular activities with minimal assistance. The financial aspect became important because his ex-wife frequently overspent their budget on expensive clothes and home decor. She grew up in a wealthy family, so she was accustomed to having nice things. My husband told me she regularly borrowed money from her parents to cover expenses. Their home was filled with designer furniture, high-end appliances, and artwork that stretched their middle-class income to the breaking point. This created tension with his in-laws, who questioned why their daughter had to ask for money when she was married. On multiple occasions, her father made comments about how a real provider wouldn't leave his daughter wanting for anything. One Thanksgiving, her brother presented my husband with a book on financial management as a joke gift in front of the entire family. His motorcycle hobby became an easy target for criticism, labeled as a selfish indulgence, while his wife struggled financially. Arguments about time and money became more frequent, and despite having been together since they were 19, they separated when their son turned 20. By this point, their son had already aligned himself with his mother, viewing his father's absence and hobby as the primary causes of their family problems. During the divorce proceedings, his ex-wife portrayed herself as having sacrificed career opportunities to raise their son, though she had worked part-time throughout their marriage. The divorce settlement awarded her a significant portion of their assets, including half of my husband's retirement savings. When my husband started dating me 2 years after his divorce, his lifestyle changed noticeably. He still works on motorcycles, but limits it to 1 evening a week and occasional Saturdays. He makes time for us to travel and try new restaurants. He joined a cooking class I was interested in, although he showed little aptitude for culinary arts. He attends my family events without complaint and participates in conversations with my family. I appreciate his efforts, but I understand why his son resents seeing his father become more balanced after the divorce. Following their argument 3 months ago, my stepson stopped visiting altogether. He didn't call on his father's birthday and declined our invitation to a small gathering at Thanksgiving. Then last week, we received a call about his back injury. He supposedly slipped at a job site and needed assistance while recovering. According to his story, the company doctor had ordered 2 weeks of bed rest and limited movement, making it difficult for him to prepare meals or drive himself to follow-up appointments. He planned to stay with his mother initially, but she told him she was traveling for business and wouldn't return for several weeks. His father contacted me, and despite my work deadlines for the upcoming quarterly reports, I arranged to work from home to help care for him during the day while my husband was at a shop. My husband suggested hiring a home health aide, but I insisted on helping personally. I thought spending time together might repair our relationship. For 3 days, I cooked his meals, drove him to a supposed doctor's appointment, filled prescriptions for pain medication and muscle relaxers, and rearranged my work schedule to accommodate his needs. I moved important video meetings to times when he was sleeping so I could focus on both my professional responsibilities and his care requirements. The first evening, I prepared his favorite meal, according to my husband, steak with roasted potatoes. I set up a small television in the guest room so he could watch sports while resting his back. I purchased additional pillows to help him find comfortable positions and downloaded several books to my tablet that he might enjoy during his recovery. When he complained about the firmness of our guest bed, aggravating his back pain, I ordered a memory foam mattress topper with overnight delivery. Yesterday morning, I returned from picking up breakfast at a local bakery and heard him speaking loudly on the phone in his room. I paused outside his door when I heard my name mentioned. He was talking to his mother and laughing about how gullible we were. I took out my phone and began recording. He mentioned applying for new jobs, but said he was milking the situation as long as possible because he deserved to be taken care of after how his father treated them. He specifically said he enjoyed watching me run around like a servant when he could do everything himself. He then described how he had practiced walking with a limp because of the back pain when anyone was watching, but moved normally when alone. He laughed about the memory foam topper I had purchased, calling it an unexpected bonus in his plan. When his mother asked how long he intended to continue the deception, he replied, "At least a month. Why not? Dad owes us after all those years he spent in that garage while we struggled." I left the house immediately and called my husband. I forwarded the recording and explained what I'd heard. My husband closed his shop early and arrived home within 40 minutes. Together, we confronted my stepson. When questioned, he denied everything until I played the recording. After several weak excuses, he finally admitted the truth. He'd been fired from his electrician job for showing up intoxicated at a customer's home. The customer, who had small children, reported his condition to the company owner, resulting in immediate termination. He worried his father would lecture him endlessly about responsibility if he revealed the truth. Though he had enough savings to cover rent for another month, he didn't want to waste money when he could live with family. Initially, he planned to stay with his mother, but she had recently started dating someone new and wanted privacy. They fabricated the business trip story together, along with a back injury, to ensure we would take him in without questions. The detailed planning of their deception became apparent. He had researched common back injury symptoms online to make his performance convincing. The doctor's appointment I drove him to was actually a meeting with a friend who worked in medical billing, and it helped him obtain a back brace and legitimate-looking medical documents. The prescription I filled had been written by a doctor his mother knew socially, who agreed to prescribe mild pain relievers without an actual examination as a favor, which I know is completely illegal, by the way. My husband expressed disappointment, but said if his son had been honest about losing his job, we would have helped him anyway. He might have offered temporary work at his shop while his son looked for another position in his field. However, the calculated deception, especially making me adjust my work schedule unnecessarily, crossed a line. My husband told him he needed to leave our home by the following day. My stepson became defensive and blamed me for ruining his relationship with his father. He claimed I had changed his father and made him choose his new family over his real one. He brought up Christmas 2 years ago when my husband attended my family gathering instead of the event at his ex-wife's home, describing it as evidence of my husband's shifted priorities. He stated that his father had become soft since marrying me, abandoning the dedication to motorcycles that had once defined him. That comment, after all I had done to help him, pushed me beyond my limits. I told him that he and his mother were both manipulative and entitled. I pointed out that while his mother might not care about my husband anymore, a son should still respect his father. I said they were both freeloaders who only valued my husband for what they could get from him. I mentioned that his mother had spent years complaining about my husband's hobby, yet now they criticized him for reducing time spent on it. I brought up specific instances when my husband had financially supported him after trade school, including helping with the security deposit for his apartment and purchasing specialized tools for his work. In the heat of the moment, I stated that as long as I remained in his father's life, I would ensure he never took advantage of my husband again. even if that meant encouraging his father to remove him completely from our lives. My stepson went silent, closed his bedroom door, and didn't emerge for the remainder of the evening. When we woke the next morning, he had already left, taking all his belongings. The guest room was cleaned, with the linen stripped from the bed and folded neatly at the foot. The memory foam topper had been removed from the mattress and placed in its original packaging. He left his house key on the kitchen counter with a note that simply said, "Thanks for letting me stay." We assumed the matter was resolved until his mother began bombarding us with texts and calls. She demanded I apologize for speaking to her son that way, insisting I had no right to involve myself in family matters since I wasn't really family. She called my husband's shop repeatedly, forcing him to instruct his employees to screen calls. She sent emails with lengthy explanations of why her son's behavior was justified given his father's past failures. We blocked her number, but she continued contacting us through other family members and even showed up at my husband's shop. During her visit to the shop, she knocked over a display and demanded to speak with my husband in front of customers. His employee called the police when she refused to leave, though she departed before they arrived. She left a handwritten letter on his car that detailed all the ways he had failed as a father and husband, concluding with a threat to make him pay for allowing me to speak to her son disrespectfully. My husband acknowledges I spoke harshly, but believes his son's actions warranted a strong response. However, he's concerned about my statement regarding cutting his son from our lives, as it seemed controlling and overstepped boundaries. While I stand by most of what I said, I recognize that particular comment went too far. So, aita for telling my stepson I'd make sure his father cut him from his life? Update 1. Thank you to everyone who commented on my post. I want to clarify something important. Parents naturally feel protective of their children regardless of their behavior. My husband's mixed feelings about my confrontation with his son are understandable. If I were in his position, I would likely feel conflicted as well. This situation isn't my husband versus me. We're both processing how we handled the confrontation with his son. Please refrain from criticizing my husband in the comments. He bears no responsibility for this situation. After 2 days of reflection, my husband and I discussed the entire incident. I acknowledged that my statement about cutting his son from his life was excessive, but maintained that I wouldn't apologize given the circumstances. My husband agreed that no apology was necessary. He believes his son owes both of us an apology, especially considering I rearranged my work schedule specifically to care for him. My husband confirmed the accuracy of my observations about his son's behavior resembling his mother's entitled attitude. He worried about this pattern for years, but permitted it because of his love for his son. During our conversation, my husband became visibly upset when describing his efforts to raise a responsible adult while his ex-wife undermined those lessons. He mentioned feeling responsible for the current situation because his absence during his son's teenage years may have contributed to these behavioral issues. If he had balanced hobby and family better, perhaps his son would have developed different values. He recounted how his son had once been interested in motorcycles too, joining him in the garage on rare occasions to learn basic maintenance. At age 15, his son asked for a small motorcycle of his own, but his mother immediately objected, citing safety concerns. Instead of supporting his interest, she enrolled him in tennis lessons and debate club activities that kept him away from the garage on weekends. When his father missed tournaments due to motorcycle shows, it reinforced the narrative that his hobby took importance over his son's achievements. I reassured my husband that he wasn't solely responsible. He worked long hours at his regular job as a mechanical engineer before starting his own motorcycle repair business, and his hobby provided necessary stress relief. He maintained their financial obligations and contributed to their son's college fund consistently. He worked on motorcycles partly because it allowed him to stay home rather than going out with coworkers or friends. His ex-wife refused to adjust her spending habits despite their financial limitations. She redecorated their living room annually, purchased new vehicles every 2 years, and insisted on expensive vacations that required months of saving. Despite their comfortable middle-class income, she demanded luxury items and experiences that stretched their budget. When my husband suggested more affordable alternatives, she accused him of limiting her lifestyle. His in-laws regularly made comments about his inability to provide the lifestyle their daughter expected. During family gatherings, they pointed out the contrast between their daughter's childhood home and her married living situation. Rather than adapting to financial reality, his ex-wife borrowed money from her parents, creating further tension. The loans were never formalized, allowing her parents to mention them repeatedly as evidence of my husband's inadequacy. My husband worked additional hours to reduce their dependence on her family, which unfortunately reduced his time at home. I pointed out that even now, with her son fully grown, his ex-wife had an opportunity to guide him toward honesty and responsibility. Instead, she participated in his deception. My husband's son needs guidance, but his mother reinforces problematic behavior. Eventually, he will need to recognize his mother doesn't prioritize his best interests, but uses him as a weapon against his father. My husband mentioned that during the divorce proceedings, his ex-wife frequently changed visitation schedules last minute, citing their son's academic or extracurricular commitments. When he attempted to attend school functions independently, he often discovered the events had been rescheduled or canceled without his knowledge. His ex-wife controlled the flow of information about their son's activities, effectively limiting his participation in their son's life while simultaneously criticizing his absence. We decided to ignore further communications from his ex-wife, as engaging with her accusations would only prolong the conflict. Whether his son chooses to apologize and rebuild their relationship or continue following his mother's influence remains his decision. Update 2. 3 weeks have passed since my last update. 4 days after posting it, my husband's ex-wife appeared unannounced at our front door at 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday. When I answered, she demanded to know why we were ignoring her messages. I informed her neither my husband nor I wished to speak with her, but she pushed past me into her entryway and began shouting for my husband. Her behavior prompted an immediate response from me. I told her she had no right to force her way into our home. She countered that this matter involved her family, and declared I had no place in the discussion, just as I had no right to speak to her son as I did. She referred to me as the second wife, rather than using my name, and suggested I should know my place in the hierarchy of my husband's relationships. Before my husband reached the front of the house, I informed her that while this was once her home and family, I became part of this family when I married her ex-husband. I reminded her that I was the one who cared for her son while he pretended to be injured, which earned me the right to address his behavior. I pointed out that I had prepared meals, rearranged furniture to accommodate his supposed needs, and modified my work schedule, all for someone who was actively deceiving me with her cooperation. My husband interrupted our exchange and firmly instructed her to leave, stating he had nothing to discuss with her. She became increasingly agitated, insisting he was being unreasonable and should prioritize his son over me. She brought up specific instances from their marriage when he had chosen motorcycle events over family obligations, suggesting his current behavior proved he had never valued family connections. When he remained silent, she eventually ran out of arguments and began using profanity before departing. As she left, she threatened to ensure my husband never saw his son again. Her parting threat confirmed my earlier assessment. She viewed her son primarily as leverage against my husband rather than as an individual with his own needs. We decided to contact my stepson directly to share what his mother had said, explaining that she was using him as a weapon in her ongoing resentment toward his father. My husband also wrote a lengthy message describing his perspective on their family history. He detailed his financial struggles during the marriage, his ex-wife's unreasonable expectations, and acknowledged his own shortcomings, particularly his absence from family activities. He explained why his son might feel closer to his mother and distant from him, but pointed out that a parent who truly prioritized their child's well-being wouldn't encourage dishonesty and manipulation. He described specific memories he valued from his son's childhood, teaching him to ride a bicycle, building a treehouse together one summer, attending his high school graduation. He mentioned keeping photos of these events in his shop office and looking at them regularly. He expressed his love for his son despite everything that had happened. My husband noted that he had always supported his son financially and emotionally when asked directly, including helping him apply to trade school and purchase his first professional toolkit. He expressed regret for not being more present during his son's formative years, but emphasized that his current desire to rebuild their relationship was genuine. He concluded by saying he would respect whatever decision his son made regarding future contact, but hoped for reconciliation. We received no response for nearly 2 weeks. Yesterday, my stepson finally replied. He apologized for his behavior, admitting he had acted childishly. He explained that despite being an adult when his parents divorced, the separation affected him deeply. Seeing his father change his habits for a new relationship when he hadn't done so for his mother created resentment. The comparative ease of his father's second marriage made him question whether his father had ever truly tried in his first. He acknowledged that his mother's guidance had been misguided and revealed they had been arguing frequently over this situation. She insisted he maintained distance from his father while I remained in the picture, characterizing any reconciliation as disloyalty to her. After reading his father's message, he felt genuine remorse and requested another chance. He mentioned securing a job interview with another electrical contractor and wanted to share that news with his father in person. We invited him for dinner this weekend to discuss everything face-to-face. Update 3. The dinner with my stepson exceeded our expectations. He arrived punctually with flowers and a gift basket containing local specialty foods, which seemed excessive but demonstrated his sincerity. Upon entering our home, he immediately began apologizing to both of us. He hugged his father for several minutes, repeatedly expressing regret for his actions. He then described the aftermath of our confrontation. Contrary to our assumptions, he hadn't been staying with his mother these past weeks. She had explicitly told him she was living with her new boyfriend and didn't want him interfering with her privacy. Her claims about business travel had been fabricated entirely to facilitate his deception. Instead, he had been sleeping on a friend's couch while job hunting and maintaining occasional phone contact with his mother. My harsh words had affected him profoundly, not because they were cruel, but because they were accurate. He admitted my assessment of the situation had forced him to reconsider his behavior and his mother's influence. When he contemplated apologizing to us, his mother strongly objected, which sparked multiple arguments. After receiving his father's message explaining the family history from his perspective, he decided to evaluate his relationship with his mother critically for the first time. He told us that throughout his parents' divorce, his mother consistently portrayed his father negatively, describing him as selfish and emotionally unavailable. She referenced his motorcycle hobby as evidence of his character flaws, suggesting he valued inanimate objects over family relationships. This characterization colored his perception during his formative years, creating a narrative where his father was solely responsible for their family's end. When I began dating his father, his mother intensified her criticism, suggesting his father had never valued family life and likely pursued other relationships before their separation. She implied my husband's willingness to adjust his schedule for me proved he had been capable of being present all along, but had chosen not to be for them. Given his already distant relationship with his father due to work commitments and hobby pursuits, these accusations seemed believable. His mother exploited this distance to further alienate them. My stepson has decided to limit contact with his mother while he works on rebuilding his relationship with his father. He mentioned that her new boyfriend appears controlling and frequently makes decisions that affect her without consultation, ironically mirroring the behavior she accused my husband of during their marriage. He secured a job interview with another electrical contractor and plans to move forward independently. After dinner, he asked to see his father's current motorcycle project. They spent over an hour in the garage discussing restoration techniques, suggesting the possibility of shared interests moving forward. I've accepted his apology without reservation. At 25, he's still finding his way, and the complexities of family loyalty clouded his judgment. Everyone makes mistakes, especially during turbulent periods. The important thing is his willingness to acknowledge his actions and make amends. My husband appears genuinely relieved to have this opportunity to reconnect with his son, and I'm optimistic about our future as a family. Last weekend, my stepson joined us for a local motorcycle show where my husband was exhibiting his recently completed restoration. It marked the first public event they had attended together in years, and watching them discuss technical details with other enthusiasts suggested a foundation for rebuilding their relationship. We've planned a monthly dinner moving forward, creating regular opportunities for communication without pressure. And for the first time since I've known them, their conversation flowed naturally without underlying tension. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Parents kicked me out to make room for my pregnant sister, and I had to live in my car while working 2 jobs. 6 years later, they called asking for money because my sister has 4 kids. Growing up, I always knew my family was very dysfunctional. No one ever really spoke to each other. My father was a lawyer, and he was mostly busy with his clients all the time. My mother was a teacher at a private high school. It was usually just me and my sister, Sarah, at home. Sarah was one of those girls on whom every guy had a crush, and she took advantage of that. I was older than her, so naturally, I always tried to make sure she was careful and not doing something that could get her into any trouble. But she was not someone who listened to anyone. She used to do whatever pleased her, and every time she got into any trouble, I had to bail her out. At the end of the day, my parents always blamed me for Sarah's mistakes because I am the older one and should know better. My parents were always more focused on my younger sister than me. They really tried to hide the fact that I was not their favorite child, but it was obvious. It was not like they would treat her like a princess and treat me like trash, but they were just more inclined towards her. I mean, even when I turned 18 and got into college, they wanted me to stay with them to save up some money for the future. So I never had a reason to think that they would not be there for me if I needed them. I, 26F, am a real estate agent. I would say I am doing quite well in life. I have a great career. I am making a name for myself. I am a homeowner, and I recently got engaged to my boyfriend, Matt, 28M. Overall, I am doing well in life. It took me a lot to reach where I am, and I had no support from my family. They were not even around 6 years back. When I was a sophomore in college, my sister was in her senior year of high school, and she had this up-to-no-good boyfriend, and she was obsessed with him. She got pregnant with his child when she was 17. He stuck around and took accountability for his actions, and he was ready to take responsibility for the child. My parents got to know about the pregnancy, and they completely lost their minds. At first, their first thought, for some reason, was that I should have spoken to her about being more careful. After all, she is my younger sister, and I should always look out for her. I have no clue how that was my fault, but I still did not pay enough attention to that. After a lot of fights and me trying to convince them that it would be all right, they had no other option than to accept it. The day after Sarah told them about her pregnancy, my mother came up to me and told me that I needed to move out within a few days. I was confused and I asked her what she meant, and she said that the house was not big enough for the 4 of us, especially with Sarah's boyfriend moving in and a baby on its way. She told me my sister needed more space and that moving out would be a way of showing support to her. I tried to reason with my mother and ask her if I could just stay for at least a couple more months so that I could get an apartment for rent near my college. She was completely against my offer and asked me to move out and stay someplace else. I realized there was no point arguing with her, so I just accepted my fate. The next day, I packed everything I owned, and as I was about to leave, my father stopped me to let me know that they would no longer be able to pay my college tuition because they needed that money for Sarah and the baby. I wanted to be surprised and scream at him, but I did not say anything. I just left. I went straight to my grandparents' house, hoping they would let me stay with them, but they refused to take me in. I did not have a place to go to. I had my car, and I spent several nights in that car, parked somewhere near my college. I started looking for jobs immediately after leaving the house, and I had to get 2 jobs. The only good thing was that I had an amazing scholarship, so the tuition was not as high. It was almost impossible to even afford to rent a place, and on top of that, I had to save up for my college tuition, and the jobs did not pay enough. There were days I did not even get to have one full meal. I lived in my car, and juggling college and work was one of the hardest things ever. Months went by, and I was still living in my car. Eventually, I saved up some money and I started living in one of those community hosts. All this while, my parents never even called, not even to make sure that I was alive. Neither did Sarah. I called once after I heard she gave birth, and that was it. 6 years went by just like that. No contact at all. I never even heard about them from anyone in these 6 years. I moved to a different city, and I built a life for myself, a comfortable one. I was happy until yesterday. Right before I was going to bed, I got a call from an unknown number. I thought it must be someone trying to reach out to me about a house listing or someone looking for an agent, but it was almost 11 at night, so I thought I would ask them to call me the next day during office hours. As I picked up the call, the voice sounded very familiar. It was my mother, calling after 6 years of no contact whatsoever. For some reason, I thought she called because she missed me and just wanted to talk to me. That is what she made it sound like at first, and I believed her. I was emotional. After all, I was hearing her voice after so many years. I cried, and I turned into a little girl. I started telling her about everything I have accomplished, about my life. I even invited her to my wedding. I was ready to forget about the fact that they were not around for so many years. But then, the next thing she said gave me a reality check. She just called me because they needed my help with Sarah and her kids. Kids, plural. She told me about my sister's situation, which is terrible. After the first child was born, she and her boyfriend got married, and they started permanently living with our parents. 6 months into the marriage, they got divorced, and she was already pregnant with the second child, but the father completely disappeared from her life. Then, after the second child was born, she started leaving both the kids with our parents and going out to party all night and just doing her thing. 2 years after the second child was born, she was dating this guy who got her pregnant again, and they got married. Everything was going well. Then Sarah cheated on her husband, and she is now pregnant with the affair child. On top of that, she has no clue who the father is, and she recently got divorced again. Now my parents want me to move back to the town I used to live in and look after my sister. I found this very amusing, so I asked her why they thought I would give up my life and career completely to move back and look after my 24-year-old sister who has wrecked her own life. Her reason made the whole thing even funnier. My parents needed me to look after their poor baby after they passed away. After everything they have put me through, after promising so much to me, they still abandoned me. I did everything on my own. I built my own life and they were never around. And now they want me to come and cater to my train wreck of a sister, the one they abandoned me for. There is no way I would ever do that in a million years. I needed my parents, and they left me to fend for myself. I clearly told my mother that there was no way I was coming back for them or Sarah, and I hung up. I could not sleep all night after that phone call. My parents were supposed to take care of me and look after me. They had some responsibilities toward me, and they fulfilled that with Sarah, but not me. They only remembered me when they needed my help with my sister. They needed me to look after her when they gave up looking after me when I needed them the most. Since the phone call, I have been receiving texts from so many of my relatives saying I am entitled, and I should help my family, and family looks out for each other, and other similar things like that. I do not understand where these relatives were when I was at my lowest, when I was kicked out of my house and had nowhere to go. They are supposedly my family. Why did they not look out for me when I needed help? I spoke to my fiancé and my friends about this. Most of them think I am doing the right thing, but some of my friends are suggesting that I should go and meet my so-called family because even though they were not there for me, I do not have to stoop down to their level and let them be on their own when they are in need, and if I do not show up for them, it would just mean I am being a terrible person. This difference in opinion is really confusing me. I really do not know what to do. AITA for not helping my parents and my sister when they could really use my help? Date 1. It has been 2 days since my mother called, and my phone is still constantly buzzing with my relatives' texts about how I am a terrible person for denying any help to my sister. I am second-guessing my decision right now. They did leave me on my own, but they are still my parents, and I do not want to abandon them. Maybe my friends are right. Maybe I should not stoop down to their level. I could be the bigger person and let go of the past. I cannot lie and pretend like I do not feel bad for my sister. After all, she was my best friend for the longest time. I mean, we grew up together. We did everything together. When all of this started happening, she was just 17. She needed someone wise to guide her through life, and our parents failed her just like they failed me. And even though the whole getting pregnant thing was her fault, she does not deserve the life she is in right now. It is very unfortunate that she must go through so much at such a young age. The least I can do is look after her, especially when I have the resources to look after her. But then something still feels so wrong. I feel conflicted. She is my little sister. They are my parents. This is a part of my responsibilities. But why should I think of them when they never thought of me? Sarah always got everything she wanted. She was never denied anything. She made a mistake and I had to pay for it. I was living on the street, working and putting myself through college, while she was out having babies and partying and messing around with boys. She messed everything up and wrecked her life, and I got punished for it. I cannot change the fact that I love my sister, but my resentment and anger are bigger than any love I have towards her. So I am genuinely conflicted, and I still do not know what to do. Update 2. Hi guys, it has been a month since my mother called, and I was debating on what I should do. Eventually, I decided to let it go because they were not reaching out to me anymore. So I thought, why bother? But last week, I got another call from the same number. I did not want to pick up the call, but I did. It was Mom. She was crying heavily, and that scared me. I asked her what happened, and she told me Sarah was in the hospital because she had an accident. They needed me to be there because they did not have enough money to pay for the required procedures. I did not think twice before getting into my car and driving all the way to my hometown. Within a few hours, I reached the hospital, and my parents were there. Mom was crying and Dad was walking around trying to calm himself. I went in there, and my mother was overjoyed to see me. She came running towards me and hugged me, thanking me for being there. I asked them about what happened, and apparently, my sister was driving when another car that was on the wrong route hit her car. But since the airbags inflated, her condition was not as bad as it could have been, but they had to deliver the baby prematurely, and the chances of survival were low, but they assured us that Sarah would survive. I thought I would just check into a nearby hotel, but my parents insisted that I stay with them, and I am currently back in my old room. I thought maybe they turned it into a nursery or something for the kids, but it is almost exactly the way I left it 6 years back. They did not even touch the room. I got to meet my little nieces and nephew. They are very well behaved, which kind of took me by surprise for some reason. According to my 5-year-old nephew, they have heard a lot about me and are really excited to see me. For some reason, I was sure I would dislike my sister's kids, but in the past few days, I have really come to love them. My sister is in a stable condition now. The baby is still in a critical condition, but we are hoping for the best. I went to visit Sarah, and she seemed happy to see me, but it was so hard for me to see her in that condition. Whatever I had against her just went away. All I could see was my little sister crying in pain and just wanting her child to survive. If there was anything I could have done to make her feel better, I would have, but all I could do was just sit beside her and hold her hand. I have not had a proper conversation with my parents yet. I probably should, but it just does not seem like the right time. I will wait till things are okay. Meanwhile, I need to go back home for a week. I need to talk to my manager and arrange a few things, get my things in order, and I will come back again once it is done. I will keep you guys updated if anything happens. Update 3. Hey guys, so it has been a few weeks since I gave an update, and this seems like the right time to do it. So, after the last update, I went back home and did whatever I had to. Sarah called me while I was back home, and she asked me if I could bring my fiancé with me the next time I visited. She said she has missed out on a huge part of my life and wants to make it up to me, and it would not be possible for her to travel all the way to the city I am living in to be a part of my life, so if I am okay with it, I should bring him along. I ran this idea past him and he was on board with it. Within a few weeks, I went back to my hometown along with my fiancé, Matt. We were planning on staying in a hotel, but again, my parents insisted we stay with them. My sister got discharged from the hospital while I was back home, but her baby is still in the hospital. She said that the baby is in a more stable condition, and the chances of survival are higher than before. This time, I finally sat down and spoke to my parents. They asked me to stay back and live with them again. They said it would be nice to get the family back together. I hated every word they said, but I kept quiet because of Sarah. The things they kept saying were that I made it, and they always had faith in me, and they knew I could do it. I hated them for this. They knew I could do it, so they left me alone. They had faith in me, so they did not bother to check up on me for 6 whole years, and just because I made it, they need me and my help now. Is that all I am to them? I just smiled and nodded at them. They kept talking about how I was earning so much and it would help them out so much in so many ways, and all I could think was, I am not their daughter. I am just a bank to them, just their money supplier. But again, I did not say much about this. I was here for my sister. I told my parents that it would not be possible for me to stay here, but I will keep sending them money every month. They kept joking about how they would do something and make me stay in this town, and I have no clue what they meant, but I just repeated myself and said I would not be able to stay here. I am not having the best time staying here. Every day that I spend here reminds me of the fact that I was kicked out of this house, this room, because they needed space for my sister and her baby, but they did not even touch my things. My room is as it was when I left. So why did I have to leave? They did not even use the space I left for them. I have so many questions, and I cannot ask anyone any of them. I feel a little stupid being here. I am leaving next week, and I do not think I will be talking to my parents. I might talk to Sarah, I guess. I am still extremely conflicted about this whole situation. I was here for Sarah. She is all right now, and her baby is also doing all right for now, so I do not understand why I need to stay in touch with any of them anymore. Sure, I will send them the money they need, but I do not want to continue talking to them. I really wish there was an easier way to cut off ties with your family. They have put me through hell, and yet here I am. Update 4. I came back home 2 weeks ago, and a few things happened before my return, and they really messed with my head. A few days before I returned, my parents wanted to sit down with me again to have a talk. They said it was serious, so I thought, all right, I could just hear them out. They said they think I should forget about whatever happened in the past and try to move on and support my family. This kind of got on my nerves. I told them I would start sending them whatever they wanted. Why do they have to keep repeating themselves? I almost screamed at them and told them I was aware of my responsibilities and I would do whatever I needed to. To this, they made a very snarky comment. They said something along the lines of me not being around for so many years and being selfish with my money at first and finally agreeing to financially support them because of an accident. I asked them what they meant, and they replied by saying that they could not trust me because I disappeared on them for 6 years and was not willing to support them after I became financially stable. That was the last straw. I completely lost it and started screaming at them. I abandoned them? Are they serious? They kicked me out when I was completely dependent on them, when I needed them the most. Where were they when I was working day and night just to get through college? When I could not even afford one meal every day? I did not disappear on them. They kicked me out. I was living in my car and in community hosts where you do not even always get clean water to drink. They never even tried to reach out to me when I hit rock bottom. When did they try to come back into my life? When I finally made it on my own. Now that they need someone to pay for them because they did not save up a penny and wasted everything, they remember me. I was completely losing my mind and screaming at the top of my lungs. How dare they put this blame on me? I reminded them that they promised me that I would have a place to live until I graduated college, and they promised me that I would always be able to count on them, and they chose Sarah over me even though no one asked them to choose. My mother interrupted me and tried to make me understand that they wanted to do right by Sarah and her child. Mom said she and my father wanted to do right by their baby. But was I not their baby as well? They had nothing to say after this, so I just went out for a walk with Matt, and that calmed me down quite a bit. Once I returned, my father asked if he could talk to me privately, and that annoyed me because what more did they have to say? He promised it would not be anything like it was this afternoon, but at this point, his promise meant nothing to me. But I still went to his study and sat down with him. He seemed a little uncomfortable and upset, and he tried to begin speaking quite a few times, but he kept hesitating. I was trying to be patient, but after a while, it got irritating, so I just asked him to speed up the whole hesitating thing he is going through. I think I was a bit rude because he seemed a little more upset after I said what I said. He finally managed to get out a few words. He apologized. He said he thought about what I said and he spoke to my mother about it, and he feels terrible about whatever I had to go through. He said when they got to know about Sarah's pregnancy, they were completely shaken up. They knew Sarah was out of control, but they never expected her to get pregnant at such a young age. When it all went down, they completely blocked everything out of their minds, including me, and completely focused on Sarah and the baby. After he was done speaking, I realized that as a person I can empathize with him. It was a difficult time. But as his daughter, whatever he said meant absolutely nothing because it was his fault that he blocked me out of his mind. He completely focused on one daughter, forgetting the other, and whatever he said just felt like one big excuse. I told him how I felt about whatever he said and whatever had happened, and he just accepted it because I made it clear that I could not forgive them, and it is just a lot of emotional baggage that does not just go away with one sorry. The next whole week, I only spoke to Sarah and her kids. I did not say a word to my parents. And now I am back home, and I honestly do not know how to feel. My sister genuinely needs me. My parents are not getting any younger. Dad is retiring in a few years, and Mom left her job the second Sarah gave birth to her first child. I do not know. Maybe they are trying to make things better for a good reason, but there is also a high possibility that they are only trying to make things better because they need financial support. I will surely be sending them the money they need, but I am still not sure if I will visit them again. It would be really helpful if anyone reading this could give me some opinions. Update 5. It has been a month since I came back home after visiting my family, and I have had time to think everything through. My mother has called me quite a few times, and I have been in constant contact with Sarah in case she needs anything, but my father has been rather quiet since our last talk. We have spoken once or twice, but those talks were just superficial. Mom is still trying extremely hard to convince me to move back in with them or at least move back into the same town, and every time I give her the same answer. It just seems like she cannot take no for an answer, so now I just let her speak. The problem is, even if I wanted to move back into that town, I would not be able to because my whole life is here now. I cannot just resign from my job and leave my fiancé and my friends here. To be honest, even if I could, I would not move back into that town. The only memories I have from that town are being kicked out of my house and sleeping in my car and always fearing the possibility of getting robbed or something even worse happening to me. I think moving into the city was the best decision I ever made. About my parents, as I already mentioned, my mother keeps insisting that I move back, and I told her that I will not be doing that, and she thinks by that I mean I will be cutting off all ties with them and I will not support them financially. That will not be the case. I am actually a little disappointed that my mother cares more about the financial aspect than she cares about me, but I have decided that I will not keep my expectations from her anymore. I still have not thought about where my relationship with my father is going. Maybe we will just call each other occasionally and make sure we are doing all right because I do not know if I will be able to have a deeper relationship with him. I plan on continuing to stay in touch with Sarah in case she ever needs any help with anything. I only live a couple of hours away from them, so I guess in case of any emergency, I will be able to show up for them. I honestly do not know if maintaining this relationship with them, even though it is not that much, is the right decision or not, but I do not think abandoning your parents or just letting them be on their own is the easiest thing to do. I tried my best to ignore the fact that only I could help them out, but I could not let them be on their own while I had more than enough resources to look after them. I do not owe them anything, I know that. But at the end of the day, they did raise me and gave me everything I required until they kicked me out, of course. I have a lot of anger against them, but there is nothing I can do about it. I think I will just fulfill my responsibilities as their daughter and as Sarah's sister, and I will not expect anything from them anymore. I guess this is the only way to preserve my peace. And if they ever decide to leave again, they can, but this time, I will not be alone and I will not fall apart. Now on to the next story. Story 9. I found my fiancé partying in Spain with friends after he disappeared 2 weeks before our wedding, but he refused to come back and said he needed life experiences. So I called off the wedding. I, 24F, was supposed to get married 3 days back, but I had to cancel everything because Marcus, my fiancé, 24M, did something super messed up. He and I had been together for the past 5 years since we were in college, and earlier this year we got engaged. We were very happy together, and I had been super pumped about the wedding. Up until 2 weeks back, things changed all of a sudden. One morning after I woke up, I just found him gone. No note, no text, no explanation. Of course, I started panicking and tried to call him. I tried to text him, but he didn't respond. And what's worse was that his phone was switched off for one entire day. I asked his family about it, but even they had no clue, and when I reached out to his friends, they did not respond to me initially. I thought that he had gotten cold feet and had made a run for it, But as time passed, I started to think that maybe something bad had happened. I was almost going to report him missing, but really late at night, I think around 4 o'clock in the morning, I finally found out what had actually happened and why he was missing. He did not even feel the need to inform me about it himself. I found out about it when one of his friends posted a bunch of pictures on Instagram, and they were partying at some bar. Lucky for me, they had tagged the bar in their stories and posts, and when I looked up the place online, I realized that it was in Spain. I was furious because he was getting sozzled with his friends while I was worrying like crazy back here. So, I instantly texted him and told him that I had figured out where he was. I also told him that if he did not come back on the next flight, the wedding would be off. I also sent him a really long message about how disappointed I was in his behavior because he had literally just ghosted me for 1 full day and hadn't even had the common courtesy to inform his fiancée before taking off on some vacation with his friends. I was mad, and I did not bother to hide it in the messages that I sent him after I saw the post that his friend had made. But even then, he did not respond immediately. I had to wait until the next evening for him to finally call me back, and I think it was one of the most disappointing phone calls that I've ever had. When he finally did call me back, instead of apologizing profusely and trying to fix the situation, he made everything much worse, and that's why I ended up canceling the wedding. When I picked up the call, I was very cold towards him, and he had picked up on that tone. But instead of acknowledging what he had done, he instantly started getting defensive. He told me that his college friends had been planning this for him for a really long time and they had only informed him about it after they had paid for everything. He knew that the two of us had discussed the idea of bachelor and bachelorette parties before, and he knew that I did not like it, so we hadn't bothered to have these sorts of parties. But a few days before the trip, when his friends contacted him and told him about it, he knew that he had to go because it would be really rude and inconsiderate of him to refuse after they had made all the arrangements and even paid for it. He had known about it for almost 3 days before the trip, and yet he hadn't told me about it, and that made me even more upset. So, of course, I started yelling at him on the phone about his behavior. Even then, he did not seem to feel sorry and just kept getting more defensive. He told me that he knew for a fact that if he had discussed it with me, I wouldn't have agreed to it, and that's why he absolutely had to hide it from me and leave. Apparently, I don't know if it's true or not, he had tried to contact me later on in the day after he had landed in Spain, but his phone had been acting up, and after that, he forgot because he had been hanging out with his friends. It was crazy how something as important as informing me about his whereabouts could just slip his mind like that, especially when he was doing something so wrong. For some reason, though, he just couldn't understand that what he had done was not cool and kept defending himself, saying that he had only been with me ever since he turned 18, and he deserved to have some sort of life experiences, whatever that means, before he finally settled down with me. I had no idea what he was blabbering about, and after a point, I started getting really annoyed and I told him that I still stand by whatever I had said. I told him that I wanted him back on the next flight, and if he did not come back, we would be done and there would be no wedding. He told me that he was not coming back on the next flight because he and his friends had paid for a 2-week vacation and would only be coming back home a few days before the wedding. He told me that I had to deal with it. Before I could even respond to that, he just disconnected the phone call, and when I tried to call him back, he did not answer. I was very upset with him, so I kept trying to text him for the next 2 days until I finally just gave up because obviously, partying with his friends was more important to him than his fiancée and even his wedding that we had been planning for the past God knows how many months. I even told his family everything, and from what I know, they tried to contact him and convince him to come back as well, but he did not respond to them either. So, eventually, I did what I had to do and I called off the wedding. I did not make any formal announcements. I just reached out to everybody who had been invited and sent them a message saying that the wedding had been called off. I also made sure to tell them not to speak to Marcus about this and explained why exactly the wedding was being canceled. I spoke to the vendors, took care of the cancellation charges and stuff, and I figured that I was going to get the money back from him later, but what was more important was teaching him a lesson, and I think that's where I might have messed up. Our parents were not happy about what I was doing and they wanted me to at least speak to him, wait for him to come back, and then have a discussion with him, but I was not willing to do that because I was so angry and upset. Just for the record, we have never had problems like this in our relationship before. Of course, like any other couple, we do fight over petty stuff sometimes, but most of the time, they are just insignificant arguments that are easily solvable and we do solve them. That's why we had been together for almost 6 years. and I had never felt that I'm too young to be getting married or that I'm not sure about him. I thought that he felt the same way, but when he said that he wanted to have some life experiences before he settled down with me, I felt really betrayed and I felt like I might have overreacted. A couple of days back, he finally returned from his trip and he came straight back home, but I refused to let him in. He came back home around the evening and I didn't even open the door to him. I told him to go away from inside the house. We argued about it for a bit and he told me that I couldn't do this to him because we were supposed to be getting married in a few days. All the arrangements had already been made, so I needed to speak to him and sort this out instead of acting so immature. And that's when I broke the news to him. I actually opened the door because I wanted to see his face and I told him that the wedding had been called off and he had no right to act shocked about it either because I had told him that that was exactly what I was going to do if he did not come back home soon. So all I had done was live up to my words. He was shocked and I could see him getting upset, and within a few seconds, he started crying and telling me that after being together for 6 years, I couldn't just dump him over something like this. He started apologizing over and over again, telling me that he was ready to do whatever it took to forgive him, but I just had to marry him. It really took me a lot of effort, but I knew that I couldn't forgive him. So, I just shut the door, and he kept crying and begging for me to talk to him outside for a good 20 minutes or so before he finally left. I know that he's staying with his parents right now and he is completely shattered because of what has happened, which is why I feel really guilty because his parents have kept in touch with me and have told me that he has been refusing to eat or even come out of his room, and all he asks is whether I have agreed to meet him yet or not. They don't say it, but I know from their tone that his parents and even my parents think that I have been too hasty and maybe a little too harsh in dealing with the situation, and after yesterday I've been wondering about it myself. Because apart from the group of college friends that had gone on the trip with him, everybody who had been on the guest list had received a message from me informing them about the wedding being called off and why. Most of them did not respond to me apart from just consoling me, but I know that a few of them who were kind of close with Marcus, in spite of my note telling them not to bring this up with him, had actually gone out of their way to forward in my message. When he was out with his friends, he hadn't taken it seriously because he thought that they were bluffing and trying to scare him into coming back. Now, of course, he regrets everything that he has done, and he has been sending everybody messages of his own telling them that he's really sorry about everything because he knows that he has let everybody in his life down, especially me. Since I've blocked him, he can't get to me directly, so he has been telling everybody else on the guest list to pass on the messages to me, and all of those texts have been of him just apologizing, telling me how much I mean to him and how he would hate to lose me forever. He has said that he still wants to get married to me and he doesn't even care if we don't celebrate it in the grand way that we had planned. He just wants to be with me, and he knows that he has made a huge mistake, but he's never going to repeat it again. All he needs is a second chance. I'm just paraphrasing right now because it will be too much work to copy and paste those messages, but people have been forwarding those texts to me and I don't know why. I just feel really guilty about it, particularly after yesterday. Like I said in the beginning, I was supposed to get married yesterday, and when I woke up, it just hit me so hard that I was supposed to be getting married today, but it's all ruined now. A relationship of almost 6 years, it's just gone, just like that. Of course, something like that is very difficult to come to terms with, and on top of that, I had people flooding my phone with consolation. Some people were still forwarding apologies from Marcus, and most of them just had nothing worthwhile to add to the conversation, so they were just randomly texting me to say hi and stuff. But I just felt so empty. I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down in just a couple of days, which it, in fact, had. So, I was already finding everything very, very hard to deal with emotionally, and I decided that I was going to try and talk to my parents to clear my head. But when I went to them, I could see that they were very upset as well because they were also quite emotionally invested in all of this. Naturally, Marcus and I have been together for 6 years, and we have pretty much grown up together since we were 19, so it's a massive deal for everyone involved. I thought that my parents were going to comfort me, that they were going to tell me that I did the right thing, but instead, when I tried to speak to them about what I was going through, at first they just didn't say anything and eventually they told me that they didn't think I had done the right thing. When they said that, my world just came crashing down around me because I had already been having a lot of doubts about what I had done, and my parents, of all people, saying that they did not agree with what had happened was just the last thing that I needed. Since then, I've been in a very weird state mentally and I keep second-guessing myself. I haven't even found the energy or the mental capacity to talk to any of my friends about this. And eventually, I just found myself here. I don't know who else to turn to at this point, and I really need completely unbiased opinions because I'm just lost right now. So, ITA for canceling my wedding after my fiancé went on an impromptu bachelor trip 2 weeks before our wedding and refused to come back when I asked him to? Update 1. Hi. Thank you to everybody who commented on my post. It has been 4 days since I posted, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about whatever has happened. I spoke to my parents about whatever they said, and I told them that it really hurt me. I didn't think that it was fair of them not to stand by my side and comfort me, and instead, they made me feel like I was the bad guy here and I had overreacted. I mean, after I shared my story here, pretty much everybody in the comments was outraged on my behalf, so I really don't think that I did anything that wrong, and as my parents, they should understand the best of all. They heard me out when I spoke to them, but even then, they did not seem to understand, and they told me that they had only said what they felt, which was the problem because I couldn't understand how they felt that I was in the wrong here. My fiancé had literally taken off on a holiday with his friends without even informing me and then refused to come back when I told him to. I think it's a pretty big deal, and it's not like I hadn't warned him of the consequences. He knew that I was going to call off the wedding if he did not do as I asked him. I don't even think that my demands were that unreasonable, especially considering the fact that we were supposed to be getting married. So, even after all this, how am I in the wrong? And it's baffling to me that my parents don't seem to understand it. They keep telling me that they get that I'm upset, but it was still a really petty reason to cancel a wedding and break up our relationship of almost 6 years. It wasn't easy for me to do it either, and the least they can do for me is just be supportive, but it seems to me like they're not even willing to do that. I've tried to speak to them about this a couple of times, and every time we just ended up fighting, so now I don't think that I'm going to keep trying to talk to them and make them see my side of things. If they don't get it, I don't think I can help it anymore. They can keep believing that I'm the bad guy here, but I know what I did and I know why I had to do it. Life has already become very difficult for me in the past couple of weeks, so I don't need them to add to it. Apart from them, I've also had to speak to a couple of other people, mostly friends who had been forwarding me all the messages that Marcus had been telling them to send to me. As politely as I could, I explained to them that I was already going through a very difficult time, and I did not need them to keep sending me the messages that Marcus wanted to pass on to me because it was only making things hard for me emotionally. So, I requested them to stop sending me these messages because I did not want to read them, and I don't even care if I came off as heartless or whatever. I just wanted this whole situation to stop because all the messages had started to make me feel as if I was obliged to talk to or meet Marcus, and I'm not ready for that. I'll do things at my own pace, not just because people are sending me messages from him and are pestering me. After that, most people stopped and told me that they were really sorry that they had been forwarding the messages, but they felt bad for Marcus. However, if I didn't want them doing that, they would respect what I wanted and stay out of this. That was the majority of people, but a couple of our common friends started attacking me after I sent them that message telling them not to pass on messages from Marcus anymore. They started calling me self-centered and told me that I was destroying a relationship purely on an ego trip. These people have known me for quite some time, so if that's what they really think about me, I don't have anything to say to them. If my own parents can misunderstand me, I don't think I have the right to expect anything from my so-called friends of all people. When they started attacking me and trying to guilt-trip me, I didn't even bother to argue with them or try to get them to see my side. I had already learned my lesson with my parents, so I just blocked them and decided to move on with my life. I know that right now everybody thinks that Marcus is the victim in the situation and that I am the heartless control freak who dumped him just because he refused to come back from a trip on my terms. It's just very shocking that even after knowing the entire story, people still had any sympathy for him because as far as I remember, I had mentioned all the details in the message which I sent out to people telling everyone that the wedding was called off. I guess I'll never understand these things, but anyway, it doesn't matter anymore. The bottom line is that the relationship is over and that I'm not getting married to this guy anymore. I have started to try and make my peace with that fact, and it's better that everybody else around me tries to do the same. Update 2. Hi. So it's been 2 weeks since I last spoke to my parents, and since our last fight, they haven't tried to contact me. I don't mind it. If they don't see my point even now, I can't help it. Most other people who have been passing on the messages from Marcus have also either given up or been blocked, so that's that. But a couple of days back, very shockingly, the friends that he had gone on that trip with contacted me out of the blue. Of course, I had blocked all of them at the same time that I had blocked Marcus because I wanted nothing to do with them, And after that, they hadn't tried to contact me because of course they didn't have the guts to do it until now, I guess. Anyway, they reached out to me by writing an email telling me that they were really sorry about everything that had happened, and they had realized that they shouldn't have made such a hasty plan and roped Marcus in. Instead, they probably should have given him good advice instead of egging him on to ignore whatever I had said and just keep on enjoying the vacation with them. I don't know if they were actually apologizing or digging an even deeper grave for him, because when I realized that they had actually encouraged him not to come back when I asked him to and told him not to reach back out to me, I felt even worse about the situation. I don't care what they had said and done, I just found it very pathetic that Marcus, a grown man, had allowed himself to be misled into a situation like that, and that's how he ended up ruining everything that we had for the past 6 years over one stupid little trip. He was not a teenager who had to give in to peer pressure. He knew what he was doing, and it just made me so mad that I didn't even bother reading the rest of the email. I just deleted it immediately. I didn't care for their apology and that the rest of it would just be the same old crap, telling me to forgive him or at least talk to him or whatever. I didn't need to hear that from them of all people, because if these had been his real friends, they would have cared about his relationship and advised him to do the right thing, and they didn't do that. So now I don't need to see or read anything that they have to say. Besides, it's too late now. I've already started trying to move on, and I've accepted the fact that the relationship is over, so now there is no way that I'm going to be going back to Marcus. The last thing that I had to do, I had to inform him when he could come by to collect everything that he had left, and that would be the final closure that I needed. I have been waiting for a while because I hadn't felt ready for it yet, but last night, I finally contacted his parents and I told them that he could come by any time this week in the evening and collect everything of his. They tried to get me to speak to him while I was on the phone, but I hung up before that could happen. Like I said, the last step that I needed to complete so I could finally start trying to move on was to tell him to come over and take his things, and now that I have done that, I don't think I need to talk to him anymore. I'm done. Update 3. So, today Marcus finally came over to collect his things, and I knew that it was going to be difficult, so I had already mentally prepared myself for the worst. But in actuality, thankfully, it wasn't really that bad. I had contacted his parents almost 10 days ago so that he could come over any time in the evening to collect his things that week, but obviously more than 1 week passed before he finally showed up. In the meantime, his friends from college probably realized that I hadn't even read that email and started trying to text me from a burner phone. They skipped all the rubbish that they had spoken about in the beginning and cut straight to the chase in their texts, telling me that Marcus really missed me and that he was willing to do whatever it took to fix our relationship, but all I had to do was just speak to him. They were literally begging me on his behalf, but I just blocked them again, and after trying to call me from various numbers for a couple of days, they finally stopped trying. After that, for the past 5 days, I haven't heard anything from anyone, and then last evening, Marcus's parents called me and told me that he would be coming over today to collect his things, and surprisingly, they even apologized for everything that had gone wrong and told me that they wished that things would have worked out another way. But this is how it is, and we all have to deal with it. That was shocking to hear, and I guess that maybe Marcus had finally changed his mind about trying to win me back and had accepted what was going on. I felt a little bad about it because this meant that things were really coming to an end, but this is exactly what I had wanted from the beginning, so I dealt with it. Anyway, he came over a couple of hours ago with his dad, and I restricted myself to the guest room instead of the living room so that I wouldn't have to see too much of them while they packed their things. It took about an hour and a half for them to be completely done with everything because, of course, we had been staying together for the past 4 years, and that meant that we had a lot of stuff together. Anyway, after they were finally done, his dad left the two of us to speak in private because I had asked for it. I didn't exactly have anything in mind to say to him specifically. I just wanted to say goodbye and get that closure, I guess. So that's what I did. It was really awkward and he started to cry, but then he told me that he was really sorry that things had to end this way and he wished that he had been a better partner. But this is how it was, and of course it was too late to change things now. Seeing him cry, eventually I started tearing up as well, and I didn't want that, so we quickly hugged, wished each other the best for the future, and then he left. After he was finally gone, I ended up crying for about an hour before I could finally pull myself together, but I needed that. I needed to see him one last time and end on not such a bitter note as we had the last time. Of course, it's still not a good note to be ending on, but it's not as terrible as I had expected. I wouldn't say that I'm happy now, but at least I'm content that I got some closure. Everything hurts right now, but I know it's not the end of the world. I'm still pretty young and I have a lot to look forward to in life, so I guess I'm going to throw myself into my work, try to keep myself distracted from everything that has gone wrong, and just try to move on in general. Update 4. Hey guys, it feels really weird posting an update after almost a year since I was supposed to get married but didn't. Looking back, I think it was a good decision because I'm doing a lot better now. In the beginning, it was very difficult for me because I was not on speaking terms with my parents, and of course, the person that I had pretty much decided to spend the rest of my life with was no longer with me anymore, so my mental health really took a hit. But then with the help of a few good friends, I started getting back on my feet. I started going to the gym, I started working and partying equally hard, and I also started therapy a couple of months after my breakup. Since then, I've come a long way, and even though I wouldn't say that I've completely healed, I am definitely dealing with everything better. My parents and I have still not spoken to each other, and they have even blocked me everywhere. I guess they're too egoistic to admit that I had made the right choice for myself, but it's fine. I don't expect any better from anyone, and neither do I care if I'm being very honest. Marcus and I had also not spoken, and I had kept him blocked, but funnily enough, we ran into each other at a restaurant a couple of weeks ago. We hadn't seen each other for a long time, and it was very awkward because he was out with his coworkers and I had shown up with my friends. I was honestly considering leaving when he walked up to my table and said, "Hi." He made an effort to be nice to me, and so did I, and it was pretty good. And that's exactly why I'm writing this update right now, since I remembered how badly I had been doing around this time last year. But right now, I'm pretty content with the life that I have. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My fiancé suggested an open relationship. I do not want that in a relationship. I feel like our relationship is coming to an end. My brain is scattered in a bunch of different directions, and I feel like there is a lot for me to talk about. I'll try and organize everything as best as I possibly can. I am going to dump a lot of my thoughts here, mainly as I haven't been able to talk to anyone about them. My fiancé, 26F, and I, 26M, have been together for almost 4 years now. We have a 2.5-year-old at home, and I am blessed that my fiancée is a stay-at-home mom. Early in our relationship, I was working towards starting a business and leaving my well-paying job, all of which happened after the love and support for my partner. Since then, I made a lot of sacrifices in my life to make the business successful and to also be a good father. I completely gave up my hobbies, mountain biking, boating/fishing, gaming, guitar, etc., and also any friends to make this happen. We have had a lot of ups and downs in our relationship, like any other. I have always struggled with anxiety and communication issues, while she struggled with anxiety and depression. This relationship was the first one I was actually emotionally immersed, not some fling, in, and I felt like I had and still have a lot to learn about how to effectively communicate. There was a time, 3 to 4 months in, where I made a flirty comment to someone via Snapchat and she found out by going through my phone. This resulted in an intense argument and ended with her throwing my phone across the room in rage and destroying it. I was completely wrong for what I did and really regret it. I am a good/faithful man and would never consider cheating. Well, we have had several arguments since then about various unrelated topics, some of which have led to physical abuse against me. She laid hands on me 5 times, and it eventually got to a point to where the last time it happened, 10 months ago, it actually hurt. This is where I began to actually realize how my poor communication is hurting our relationship. I am not excusing this behavior in any way, and we sat down and had a long talk about our feelings and what had happened. It really came down to her having a very tough childhood with physically abusive parents/family members, and I think that even though she knows it's wrong, it's been programmed into her. Communicating really helped here, and I feel as if we are really making progress. Early on in our relationship, my fiancée shared that she was interested in women as well and always has been since she could remember. I was the first person she has ever told this, as her family is pretty religious and any type of homosexuality wasn't allowed in their household. 4 to 5 months ago we started talking about this again, and she really wanted to come out publicly. Who am I to deny her something that she wanted to do since she was little? I fully supported her, and she made a Facebook post basically saying she was queer and nothing is changing except the fact that you now know. She assured me that nothing is changing about our relationship. Soon after, while we were being intimate, she started saying things like, "I want you to another girl act." Lots of dirty talk along those lines. I played along as it was hot and fun, and it's between me and her. Later, there were conversations about possibly having an open relationship, and we talked about it a bit and ended up coming to an agreement that we would get an app and possibly find a couple in the same position and maybe do a swap or threesome kind of thing. Slowly, I started to feel more and more uncomfortable with this idea, but she seemed so happy. My thought process was just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's bad, and I continued to play along. We set ground rules where she was only allowed to do stuff with other females, but the more we talked, it kind of turned into no intercourse with other men. We were talking/flirting with another couple, but it became pretty clear that no one really was interested in me really, and mainly her. She started talking to this one guy and asked if she could flirt/sex possibly. This made me incredibly uncomfortable, but I went along with it for some reason. She just seemed so happy and excited, and I didn't want to take that away. They sexted, and I even read over all of it. None of it felt good. I felt like a loser. Even in the messages, she called me a free babysitter. Why am I still going along with this? What is wrong with me? Who knows, but I still played along. It was at this point she started to visually see me becoming emotionally distressed/uncomfortable with the situation, but I couldn't tell her no. She asked if she could go out for drinks tonight with this guy downtown, and I said no at first, but then said yes. I don't know what persuaded me. She told me that she really didn't want to do anything sexual at all, and it was just to go out to have fun. This guy's apartment was above a bar. They met up, and she drank a lot of alcohol. I was texted her while she was with him, and she stopped responding for almost 2 hours. Something hit me, and I could not stop crying. I wanted all of this to end. I made a terrible decision letting any of this happen. I even texted her that I felt alone, and I couldn't stop crying, and I wanted her to come back home. Still no response. Another 30 minutes goes by, and she said she is sorry and on her way home. She messaged me saying that this was way too much, and I didn't talk to her until she got home. She made it back and came into our room where I was crying, and I immediately hugged her, and she was silent. I laid down on the bed, and she started telling me that she went further than expected, and I asked how far, and she replied with, "Neither of us came." I delved deeper knowing I was not going to like what she is about to say, but she told me they made out. He ate her out, and they briefly had intercourse with no protection, and she stopped it. We had quite a long argument over this. She didn't say a single word really. It was pretty much just me crying and letting out my feelings uncontrollably. A few days later, we talked about it again, and she told me she didn't like any of it and felt like she was taken advantage of. She told me that the guy got on top of her after eating her out and just put it in, and she kept pushing him out, saying things like, "Me and my fiancé agreed that we wouldn't have intercourse. This is off limits." It only lasted a couple of seconds, and she left right after that happened. From what I understand, it sounded like she got drunk, raped, and all I can do is take her word for it. I am here for her, and we are still together. We talked about this a lot over the last couple months, and I feel like things are getting better and back to normal. Well, recently she brought up having an open relationship. She told me she really wants to experiment with other women. I feel as if we have a lot of work to do on our relationship, and I am not grown enough emotionally to handle that type of relationship. I told her I do not want an open relationship. She told me that she felt like she is getting controlled, which made me feel bad. I immediately responded with, "I cannot tell you what you can or can't do. I can, however, tell you how I feel and what I want/don't want." She asked me if it was a deal breaker for our relationship, and I didn't respond. She ended it with, "I don't want to talk about this anymore," even though she was the one to bring it up. I feel awful/toxic for doing this, but I snooped in her phone a couple times looking at mainly her Snapchats. She posts some cute/hot pictures sometimes on her story. Nothing new, just her being gorgeous. She always gets messages on there from guys saying she is sexy act. There was nothing ever to indicate that she was entertaining anyone. I have found her telling people she has taken and not interested in anyone. Recently, I looked the other day and I found that she was on a best friend streak with a guy, and none of the recent convos were saved. I can see the old convos of her basically saying thanks every time the guy comments hot or cute on her previous Snap stories. It honestly concerns me that something is going on, because in order to have a best friend streak, she needs to be sending pictures. Why would she be sending pictures to this guy? I have not brought this up to her yet, and the combination of wanting an open relationship despite what happened in the past is making me feel like something is up. Am I crazy? I honestly am not exactly sure why I'm posting this here or what I'm expecting. I just have no one to talk to and needed to say something. Thank you all for reading. Smile. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comment section. Thank you and see you in the next video.